Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Chairman Gooch, I know, is on his way. Okay. All right, first of all, we want to welcome each and every one of you here today to Augusta, to this study committee on funding of transportation. We have been traveling around the state. We're meeting in 8 different locations, and we wanted to come to the Augusta area, one, because we feel like this is an area that needs to be addressed and needs to be heard from in the state. But two, you were part of the area and the TIA that passed it, and we wanted to hear from you and what you have to say concerning that as well. But we're here to listen. That's what these meetings are about. We're having an open mic at every single meeting. We want to give everybody the opportunity to have a say and to have input into this. And as I've said from the beginning, we're open to any ideas that you might have. Nothing's off the table. We're willing to listen. And hopefully when we get through with this process, mid to late November, we'll be able to get in and put together a meaningful piece of legislation that will help to move this state forward, not for 2 to 3 to 5 years down the road, but we're trying to find a solution to 20 to 30 years down the road. We don't want to have to be back here again in 2 years or 5 years dealing with this same issue. We want to solve it now, move it down the road, and get it behind us. With that being said, I want to recognize first, where's Mr. Jimmy Boswell? He's here from the DOT board. He's right back here. Stand up. We want to thank him for being here, but I want to now also recognize the chairman of the DOT board from Augusta, Georgia, Mr. Don Grantham. Mr. Don, you want to come say a few words? We want to hear from you. Please say a few words. That'll be fine right there. Hold it down till it turns green. The little button.
Well, it won't turn green. But I think everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Chairman Roberts, I thank you very much for being here in Augusta, and you and Chairman Gooch and the panel. It gives us a great deal of credit as to what we have done here in this area regarding our transportation funding and what has taken place now in the last 2.5 years. We're very pleased to have with us today from our GDOT staff and from other members of our organization. I just want to mention a few names if you don't mind. Of course, we have with us our Commissioner, Keith Golden, and I know he'll be recognized later. We have, as you said, Jamie Boswell from the 10th District, Bane Smith, Mike Dover, who is in charge of our TIA programs, Angela Whitworth, our treasurer, Josh Waller, Jimmy Smith, who is our District 2 engineer, Todd Long, and I may have overlooked 1 or 2 others, but Jill Goldberg, I know, is here, and have I missed anybody back this way? If I did, I'd like to know that. But thank you very much for coming to Augusta. Augusta's proud to have this panel and committee here today and to learn about what's taking place in transportation. And I feel like that you're going to hear some very good things that's been happening. I could sit here and tell you a lot about them, but I'm not going to because I think it would be more in a biased situation. So I want to let the citizens of this community speak to what is taking place, and with the amount of dollars that is being spent in our region due to the TIA passage and other type of funding that we get from the DOT. I'm delighted to be a part of this agency and appreciate you gentlemen and ladies' time and what you do, not only in having to be in Atlanta for 3.5 months on a regular basis, but certainly for the time you take to travel out throughout the state and learn more about transportation and what's going on. So with that, again, I say thank you for being here, and I think we can move along with the program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, counterpart got here. I know he has a few glitches trying to get here.
I'm just making sure that the new mayor-elect could get in the room.
With that, though, if y'all don't mind, pass this down, and let's start down with Bubba, and let the members of the committee introduce themselves to y'all, and let them tell you where they're from.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Bubba Epps, representing House District 144. I serve on Chairman Roberts' Transportation Committee, and it's, along with our Vice Chairman, Representative Clark, we're here to official numbers and honor to take part in this.
Good morning. My name is Lamar Norton. I'm with the Georgia Municipal Association on behalf of 521 cities in the state, and we have great interest in this issue, and we're very honored to be a part of the town.
Good morning, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Kevin Little. I'm Chairman of Walton County Board of Commissioners and President of ACCG this year, and I'm here on behalf of our team.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Valerie Clark from Gwinnett County, House District 101, and I'm on Chairman Roberts' committee.
Steve Green, I'm Lieutenant Governor, Cable's system appointee, past chair of the Georgia Port Authority, past chair of the Georgia Chamber.
Good morning. John Burns, House District 159, Scriven County and Effingham counties. It's always good to be with our friends from Augusta. I'm not so sure that I want to announce that I'm part of the Chairman Roberts committee like y'all did, but I am. Good to be with y'all. Good to be a part of this committee.
Mark Hamilton, District 24, Forsyth County, and I'm proud to be on this committee with Chairman Roberts over here. One of the reasons that I wanted to be on this committee so hard is it took me 3 hours to get here this morning from Forsyth County, of which the first hours I drove 23 miles on Georgia 400 this morning. I'm not going to tell you how fast I drove to get here in 3 hours, but that's why I'm here. We've got to do something about the transportation infrastructure needs in the state.
That last hour that was fast.
Good morning, I'm Steve Gooch. I'm the Senate Transportation Chairman. I live in Dahlonega. I represent the 51st District, which is part of Forsyth County, which I share with Mr. Hamilton, and part of Pickens County, all of Dawson, Lumpkin, White, Union, Fannin, and Gilmer counties. It's a beautiful fall day here in the Augusta area, and I'm glad to be a part of this.
And I'm Representative Jay Roberts. I'm from down in South Georgia. I live in Ocilla, but I represent part of Tift County, Irwin County, Ben Hill County, Turner County, and part of Colby County. And I chair the House Transportation.
Good morning, I'm Tyler Harper. I represent the 7th Senate District in the State Senate. I represent the 10 counties in southeast Georgia. Ben Hill, Irwin, Berrien, Coffee, Atkinson, Bacon, Pierce, Ware, part of Charlton, part of Tift, and soon to be part of Wilcox. So it's a large area, but it's great to be in Augusta this morning and look forward to it.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning, my name is Dave Williams. I serve as Vice President for Infrastructure and Government Affairs for the Metro Atlanta Chamber. And I am here substituting for my boss, our CEO, Hala Malamog, who is a member of the committee and sends her regrets. She would have been here, except that she is hosting a luncheon in a few minutes, or actually at noon, with about 30 other chamber representatives. So she thought it would be good to be there since she was the host. So anyway, I send her greetings to you.
Good morning, my name is Michael Sullivan. I'm President and CEO of the American Council of Engineering Companies of Georgia. ACEC Georgia is a trade association for all of Georgia's engineering companies. But I'm here in my capacity as Chairman of the Georgia Transportation Alliance. The Georgia Transportation Alliance is the transportation advocacy and public policy arm of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. I'm here representing Chris Clark, who is the President and CEO of the Georgia Chamber. He sends his best regards.
Morning, I'm Senator David Lucas from Macon. I represent half of Bill, part of Jones, part of Allison, all of Twiggs, all of Wilkerson, all of Hancock, and all of Washington County. I'm here just to try to make sure somebody gets below the mat line.
With that being said, I want to recognize Representative Brian Prince. He is from the Augusta area. He also serves on the Transportation Committee. He's going to get to continue to serve on there. He showed up at that. But no, we're glad to have him here. He's a great member on the committee, and we appreciate him coming. You want to
recognize him. If you would please stand for the great honorable mayor-elect, Hardy Davis. Hardy's a good friend. He's been in the Senate for a long time, longer than I have. I've been here 4 years. But it's been great to know him. I hate to see him go, but people in Augusta are lucky to have him. Thank you.
Amen to that. He was a good member over in the House before he decided to go to the lesser chamber. And we appreciate him. Ernest Smith, Representative Ernest Smith's here. I missed you a while ago. I'm sorry I didn't catch you coming in. We appreciate him coming as well. One thing about it, he's going to always talk to you and let you know what he needs for you to know about this area and all, and we appreciate his service as well. So with that being said, we're now going to try to move on to the agenda. But one thing before, Mr. Ross King that serves on this committee, if you're not familiar, he has lost a dear loved one in his family. His daughter passed away a couple weeks ago, and they're trying to get everything in order there. So y'all please keep him in your thoughts and your prayers. That's why he's not with us, and we had a long conversation the other day. He's doing as well as he can do, but keep him in your thoughts and your prayers as he moves forward. So with that, we want to recognize the current mayor of Augusta, Mr. Deek, and it's Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah.
To say a few remarks, if you wanted to say a few.
Sure.
Welcome us.
I feel like I'm testifying before a Senate subcommittee here, so y'all keep the questions to a minimum. But I just want to welcome the committee here to Augusta. As Chairman Grantham said, we've got a lot of great things going on here. To be one of only 3 regions in the state to pass the TIA, I think is a good thing, and there's no pride of authorship. We're here to help any other county or any other region as well in moving forward with whatever pathway you guys decide to take. But my friend Barry Story of Whole Story Development has shared with me that he feels like Augusta has the finest transportation infrastructure of any city of our size in the nation. And that's due to the partnership between the local and the state government. So I want to thank y'all for that partnership. And Chairman Grantham, you've got a lot of good things to show off today, but thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. This time, we will now recognize our commissioner for Georgia Department of Transportation. Where's the applause? I mean, all y'all elected, local elected officials, y'all need to show him love. Y'all the ones that go up there and ask for projects. Y'all need to be cheering. I mean, come on.
We actually, I think I'm going to do it here, but I got to get started. We'll work through this presentation together because it's really the first time I've seen it too. We were asked here to make sure we kind of go over some of the highlights of our first meeting, kind of recap some of that, and then talk a little bit about our needs, and kind of lay out some of what we think our needs are at Georgia Department of Transportation, working with our local government. And so we'll go through the first part relatively quickly, and again, anytime you want to ask any questions, just don't hesitate. We'll do some guessing. We did bring the treasurer today. She's ready to take back some money if y'all are able to come up with anything. Again, we highlighted last time we're the 10th largest transportation system in the country. We have about 14,000 bridges. Roughly, the 4th busiest container port in the country, and that continues to grow, as you know, as well as a very large transit provider. A lot of people forget that we have a large transit system in our state. 103 general aviation airports. Those are things you've already know, so I'm not going to elaborate on those too much. I highlighted last time when we had the opportunity to talk to you guys about some of the GDOT responsibilities, and we're a very big organization. We do partner with places like Augusta, Richmond County, and Columbia to do a lot of our core functions, and they're a great partner, but we still have a large transportation system out there to maintain traffic signals, get the grass mowed. If anybody drove in from Atlanta today, the grass could use a little mowing on the interstate. Jim's committed to getting that done. It's already on the schedule. But a constant battle of just routine maintenance activities that we have in our state. We talked about our staffing last time, that we've been declining staffing. We have to figure out a different way to deliver our core functions. And, right now we have about 4,100 employees, and they're working very hard every day to try to get the core functions and core mission of the department done. But in doing so, we've had to use the private sector a lot more. And again, that costs money also in order to contract for that, some of the contracting that we need to do. So again, our routine maintenance funds, you'll see at the end of this presentation some of our needs in that area to keep that going. We've talked a lot about kind of our distribution of funds, what's made up of motor fuel and federal dollars. Of our budget, on an annual basis, we receive about $1 billion in state motor fuel. That's been very consistent. And then roughly $1.2 billion in the federal program. But as we continue to educate you that there's a large uncertainty on the federal program, and it continues to be a challenge for the Department of Transportation about how to deliver our program. This year that we're in, Congress has actually funded the Transportation Trust Fund, Highway Trust Fund, only through May. But Congress only passed the appropriations through December 11th. So right now, we only have funding through December 11th, guaranteed, for our federal program. And the way the Congress passed that, as you know, they only promised us about 70% of our federal program this year. So when you appropriate funds to us, we make the assumption the motor fuel is going to be there, and then the federal dollars are going to be there. And again, we'll talk a little bit about those assumptions and what they mean to us. But working month to month almost on a day, what we can do is not a way to run a good organization, and that's a challenge. And makes a strong case of why we need to break away from federal dependency on federal transportation dollars. We talked a lot about our budget. This is our 14 budget, based on a little over $1 billion in motor fuel and how those dollars are distributed. Again, debt service continues to be a challenge for us. We're always going to talk about that. In terms of the state side, that's the SRTA funding and the GO bond debt service. Another $122 million goes out to the local maintenance improvement grant, straight by formula. So a lot of the pie is cut up before we ever even get started doing this. The purple part, which is the $273 million, is the state match for federal transportation dollars.
Keith, I don't think we have that slide right there in our pack. But that would be a good slide to get everybody on the committee, I think. Okay. If you don't mind.
Is that not part of it?
I don't know. Unless I missed it. I mean, gosh, if you can't get, that would be a good one to get. Thank you.
Recognizing, Chairman, we spend more in debt service than we do on maintenance.
Much more.
It's a statement that we need to really understand.
Exactly.
Exactly. More in debt service than we are on maintenance.
Right. And it's a challenge, and again, debt service is a long history. We certainly can talk about that.
Touch base on that a little bit for some that may not. Sure. I mean, briefly on how that came about.
So let's talk about there's really three components of debt service, and so but we want to talk about really prior to 1996, the Olympics, the state paid GO debt service going up to that particular time. At that point, as we were leading up into those times, I think the legislature reached out to the Department of Transportation and said, "Hey, at that time, that was how you were funding the GRIP program, the Governor's Road Improvement Program. The legislature had identified a series of roads around the state that they wanted multi-lane, and y'all were working on funding that initiative. And that's sort of how debt service, GO debt service started. Y'all were selling the bonds, paying for the projects that you wanted done. Around 1993, 1994, 91? Since you look at this, probably better than I do, but at that time, some folks came over and said, "Hey, could you pick up the debt service one time for us?" And at that time, that particular year, was around $18 billion. The debt service was at that particular time, and the department used motor fuel to pay the debt service. Well, y'all have never looked back. And so, that one-time offer has turned into the gift that keeps on giving. But again, we're up to around $220 million in state motor fuel. Is that right? Is what the debt service, the state motor fuel portion of debt service is. You fast forward to that, and that really does it with the governor's fast forward program under Purdue, which really sold a bunch of bonds. And at that time, they were going to be paid for by the GO, but then it got switched at the last minute. again, state motor fuel was the way the debt service was done. So that number has continued to grow and continues to be a challenge for us. And we're still paying for, a lot of the GRIP projects, and we're still trying to advance a lot of the GRIP projects. There was some Garvey bonds sold, which is a federal program where we sold debt and we're paying it back with the federal program, and that's roughly $140 million a year on average.
186 million total.
But that includes
156 federal.
Yeah, that's my point. About 150 that's federal, and then we also have to match those federal dollars with state motor fuel dollars. Another piece is a match. That's how we roughly have about $400 million worth of debt service a year. Part Garvey, federal, and mostly state motor fuel. But again, it's one of those things that, it kind of was a one-time ask. At $18 million, that was one thing. Today, we're up around $400 million. So we talked a little bit about the gas tax last time. A lot of people still struggle with how gas tax is created in Georgia. We do, you'll hear people say that we collect about 46 cents a gallon on average. That's really correct. But what makes its way back to the Department of Transportation is what we really want to make sure you're aware of and understood how the collections were done. 18.4 cents every state pays in for Washington. And then we get to negotiate how we spend that, getting it back. 7.5 cents is the excise tax portion. That's a flat per gallon set rate. And then the governor sets twice a year, sets the prepaid rate on the 4%. The 4% comes in. 3% of that is set at 8.8 cents a gallon right now. He set that at 8.8 cents a gallon. And then the other 4% goes straight to the state general fund. We're approximately $180 million a year that goes to the general fund. And then we allow local sales tax to be collected on motor fuel. We have a few states that do that. This is kind of a breakdown of that, how we make up those numbers. You'll hear us say that we effectively receive about 16.4 cents a gallon from the state motor fuel. And then we do receive the 18.4 cents. We don't really receive 18.4 cents on the federal side. Again, 18.4 cents is what we send to Washington. How that money comes back, some of that goes to FDA, some of that goes to the administrative program, and then we receive dollars back. And in any given year, as we pointed out to you before, right now, because they're propping up the trust fund, we're actually getting more back than we're sending into Washington. But that is not a sustainable thing or something we should be basing in the future on. When we say our effective rate is 34.7 cents, this is our comparable states to the south, what they're collecting in the actual state motor fuel tax and federal taxes, their state motor fuel fees and the federal fees.
A little bit on this slide, and I know we're going to hear from it in a little bit, but talk a little bit about Georgia. We're right here on the South Carolina border.
Correct. It's a great example. Again, a lot of people here in Georgia will go over to South Carolina. They have a little bit lower state gas tax because they don't allow the local fees to be charged. So, Mr. Grant, you probably can answer. People can drive to South Carolina and get gas cheaper on a normal basis than they can buy in Georgia. And so, even though they're using our roadway network, a lot of people go out of state. It also makes some of the stations on the borders, both Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia, kind of at a competitive disadvantage at times in terms of selling gas and marketing gas because we allow that local component. Again, it's a decision that was made, but it does run the gas anywhere from 8 to 12 cents a gallon, 8 to 9 cents a gallon at the local level, the local taxes. But 34.7 is what makes.
Commissioner, I want to clarify. We heard a meeting or two for what Florida's doing. I just want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples. We heard a number of additional things that Florida is doing for their transportation efforts, such as fees on cars and driver's license, all kinds of. None of that additional money that Georgia does not charge is reflected. That's purely motor fuel
the gas tax at the pump.
As well as Florida has the ability for local tolling and all the other.
They actually allow the local government to vote to do a local gas tax, sales tax on gas.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, we were comparing Georgia's 2.1 or 2 billion compared to Florida's about 9 billion. Is the difference in the amount of money that Florida has for their road network compared to what Georgia has.
Correct. So their total budget for transportation is roughly $9 billion, about $4 billion in capital.
The reason I bring that up is we're compared to Florida so many times by constituents about the fact that they have no state income tax and how much better it is in Florida on certain things. I think it's important that we compare that they have 3 to 4 times the amount of dollars to guess, create and maintain their road network compared to what Georgia has.
Yes, and that's another point. One of the ones we'll kind of hit on a little briefly here, which is, again, this is, gas tax in general, the collections and how that's trending. And it's pretty steady. It's staying around $1 billion. You see that number kind of hovering there. As we see more fuel-efficient vehicles, as we see electric cars come into the system, we anticipate that number will really start going down, though, not trending up in terms of state motor fuel collections. That's the expectation, I think, around the country, though, not just Georgia. Dependency on on gas tax by itself is not a really good revenue stream in the future. You mentioned how do we compare. This is I think you hit on the top things. So Florida, this is really on the capital side. So again, they're about $5.1 billion total. What makes up debt service of their total program is about 11%. Florida, Virginia is about twice the size of us, 2.2 billion. North Carolina, 4.3 billion, and South Carolina a little bit smaller than us. So again, but you see debt service is always a much smaller percentage of their total program. We also talk about system size. Look at population and also the size of the system that they're maintaining. That's a very important variable to look at when you're looking at things. And again, we talked about Florida. Florida has about 43,000 lane miles. We have 48,000 miles. Our system is actually larger than Florida's. We have about 17,000 center line miles, so they're 12,000. And again, we have about, their population is much higher than ours. We're roughly right at 10 million people. But we have 47, and this is in 2012, we had approved 4,750 positions on hand. They had 7,443 employees. They still do a lot of contract mowing and service too in terms of comprehensive maintenance. But just to give you some system comparisons here, we look at, again, Ohio is always a good comparison state for us. Very similar in population, very similar in total lane miles that their system's doing. They do have probably a little bit more snow and ice maintenance activities than we have. But again, they're spending about capital, about $2.4 billion for our roughly $1.3 billion annually on capital projects. And then, as you mentioned, the routine maintenance activities. Routine maintenance is not eligible for federal reimbursement. Routine is mowing the grass, keeping the potholes filled. Some type of preservation activities are eligible, but majority of them are not. All of your mowing, cleaning ditches, all the things that you have to do that kind of goes unnoticed on a daily basis. But again, they're outspending us 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1 in some categories. And so we're a tourism state, and we know that that's very important, and that's an area that we feel like more investment is needed. Again, if you just drove here today, we mow the interstates 3 times a year. We mowed last at the end of July. They're doing the mowing right now. We'll be done for the year until next spring. So again, it's just depending on the weather, the rain, all of those activities. I think people want to see the roadside look very good, and that's very important to them. We've always talked about, I think people need to know the magnitude of what it costs to do certain things. And so we spend well over $14 million just on litter pickup each year. We have to pay what we owe for material. So we need things like $30.9 million from mowing, and we probably need to mow more. We only mow state routes twice a year. And we get many complaints from our citizens that these things are more frequently. So you really asked me, though, today to talk about what are our needs. And we kind of kind of danced around that at our first meeting and kind of just showed you kind of some of the things we thought were our needs. But and we told you that day that we really focused on mobility, the freight plan, which is very important to our state with our deepening of the ports. Safety has always got to be important and something we're very proud of. Our safety numbers continue to go down in terms of fatalities in our state. And then just our basic needs. And so just to highlight that, we say in the actual STEP, that's the 4-year program that was approved by the governor. Just recently approved again. So there's about $8.63 billion of PE right-of-way debt service, all the things that go into running the Department of Transportation for the state. Approximately $1.2 billion annually set up for capital construction, capital maintenance activities. So outside of that program, what are our real needs? Not our wants, what are our real needs? And we really want to drill down to that a little bit today. We think there's $29 billion of unidentified but unfunded projects in the GRIP program, in the freight program, in the rural mobility, and under urban mobility. The capital projects on the freight side are defined in the freight plan. And here's a good list of the actual long-haul projects that are needed in our state today that are not currently funded in the 4-year transportation STIP, or the State Transportation Improvement Program. That makes up a little over $13.35 billion in needs just on the freight side of the house. We outlined those projects that are things we really believe need to be done for the next 15 to 20 years. Capital freight projects, these are more like interchanges that need to be reconstructed in order to move freight. I-16, I-75, certainly we both agree this is a much needed project. I know you feel the same way. Our major corridors around Metro Atlanta, I-285 interchanges, the I-16, I-95 interchange coming out of the port needs to be redone. I-20 right here at the Savannah River is certainly critical. We've had a lot of mishaps here at this location. Brampton Road coming out of the ports, some Sanders Hill bypass. There's even some areas that, in the middle part of the state where you're Taylor and some of the other projects are being done. That's $1.15 billion just in these that are not currently funded. We talked about rural mobility, just as important many times as our urban areas, because these are projects that are needed around the state that make up kind of more of the rural flavor that need some improvements we need to be working on. And we feel are very critical to our mission as the Department of Transportation. That totals about $674 million. Back on the urban side, these are major cost projects. Again, Revive 285, that's our managed lane program around the north side of 285. We now call the Rome Cartersville Economic Development Corridor. It used to be called 411, but we refer to it now as the Rome Cartersville Economic Development Corridor. We're trying to get from Rome back over to I-75, which is critical to that region of the state. Sugarloaf Parkway Extension, 316 interchange. These are major projects that we currently don't have funding for to work on. We still have some projects that we think are important to GRIP to complete. This is not the entire completion of the GRIP program. These are just the ones we feel are very mission critical to complete. Again, about a $6.8 billion need just to finish out the GRIP program. So again, I think we have vision in a lot of areas. Representative Hamilton, this would be one right up your alley again. These are projects that are not even currently in the transportation plan. That are not in the financially constrained transportation plan. The widening of 400 north of McFarland Road, well over in excess of $50 million, is not in the current financially constrained transportation plan for the Regional Commission. I don't think anybody would argue that it's needed. It's just there's no funding to work on that. The 316 interchange and grade separations. We met with the University of Georgia president last week. This was his #1 item about when are you going to finish 316, making the limited access corridor all the way up to Athens, which has been on the books for years. The Making the Grange Freight Corridor, which has recently become a hot topic, and then just any unforeseen economic development opportunities. So, moving over to routine maintenance activities, though, this is something that we really haven't spent a lot of time talking about, but really want to educate you about. We have over 6,651 bridge structures that GDOT looks after. The average age is currently 44 years. The oldest bridge we have is 112 years old. The bridges average about 17,000 vehicles per day. We understand we can't do we have to do the worst first. It's not going to work anymore. We have to look at risk management now and how we can do things. And maintaining the bridges, as I said, is good repair certainly is critical. We don't want trucks being rerouted or not being allowed to be bridges being posted, making trucks go in a much longer route.
Keith, let me mention that one thing we've not included in the slide and presentation. On the previous slide, you talked about the needs that are not funded and things that we need very badly. If all you people in this area will recall, Augusta Fort Gordon received the Cyber Command here not long ago. So there's got to be new entranceway into Fort Gordon, which means creating a new road, bridges, and other types of means of transportation.
I would list that under the unforeseen economic development things
Okay.
that occur. But no, it is. There's lots of those around the state.
Yeah.
How much was that going to be? Jimmy's got right.
Matt said it's just $1 billion.
So what has it? Well, it says it's $25-30 million.
Yeah, it's about $30 million.
So just on a regular basis, our bridge replacement, 1,622 GDOT road structures need to be replaced over the next 20 years at a cost of $6.44 billion. That's just doing 89 structures a year. 2,450 locally owned structures need to be replaced over the next 20 years at $4.8 billion. That's just replacing roughly 107 structures a year at their 75-year life cycle. Last year we replaced about 60 bridges total for the state. So you can see the numbers are not adding up. Total bridge maintenance costs, this is backlog of work that we need to do just to keep up and by different types of Gs. And you see the numbers out there. Some more ongoing bridge maintenance needs in terms of bridge joints, bridge painting, deck overlays. That's the number of bridges per year we need to be doing. If you were to see the number, we're actually, all two of those columns, we're getting about $24 million a year. When you add all of those up, those are well in excess of that number. So again, critical need just on bridge maintenance. The percentage of this is our roadway condition. And I told you last time we only did about 2.5% of the system. Last year is all we resurfaced. These are some interesting numbers that I think would be very, very interesting if I could just catch the paper. So in 2002, the funding that we received, the percentage of roads that were rated above 70% has been declining since 2002. We used to do about 4 to 5%. We used to do roughly 10%. We dropped about 4 to 5%. We received a little bit of a bump when the stimulus came along a couple of years ago to catch up with some of that work. But this next slide really tells a tale. So in 2002, over 90% of the system was in good or excellent condition. In 2006, 63% of the state system was in good or excellent condition. In 2006, we ran some predictive models and estimated that the current funding levels, doing about 4% of the system a year, we would be at, by 2013, we only 59% of the system would be in good or excellent condition. But the actual numbers was about 52%. So we're actually declining at a faster rate than ever. We're now at less than 52% of our system being in good or fair condition. Just to give you some ideas on what we're doing today. So the middle column shows you about what we're allocating by program for funding for these activities. Roughly $125 million for capital maintenance, and roughly the routine maintenance activities about $51 million for a total of $176 million. The right side shows what we actually think we need for each of those programs. And again, that number dwarfs substantially about at least twice as much is needed than what we're actually getting, roughly $495 million by activity. I know some of you are very supportive of what goes on in our intermodal programs, and they're very important to the state of Georgia. We wanted to make sure you understood some of the needs in that area too. Georgia Airport's 5-year capital improvement program is $924 million with an $18.6 million state match, not state GO match.
Mr. Commissioner, that's one of my soapboxes.
Yeah.
But reiterate the program that we currently have. If we continue underneath the same map 21, it's a 90-10, 80-10-10 map.
It used to be 95-5. Now it's 95 2.5.
Correct.
Other way around. It used to be 92 and 95 2.5. Now it's 95-5. Yes. So back on the airport side, but again, our short line railroad maintenance costs is the one we do. We need roughly $41.8 million a year. We're not getting anywhere close to that, as you know. So we're roughly, our 15 budget is about $10 million for airport aid and $363,000 for rail money. And we really need about $41 million a year. So we're not just on the road and bridge side. We have needs on the airport and the rail side, very strong. So unfunded, again, in the STIP, over $29 billion in capital needs. We think our roadway maintenance activities are somewhere around $321 million a year short. For bridge maintenance, we think we're significantly short, roughly $276 million a year just to meet our over and above bridge maintenance needs, and then roughly $70 million a year for what we consider to be the airport and rail needs in the state. Those are the systems we have. And again, I rushed through that, but I know it was a recap from the last time you wanted me to be brief. But the needs part of it, we want to prepare. We have a pretty detailed list where we would give to you guys when you're ready for that. It supports all of those numbers.
Any members of the committee? Any questions?
I don't know, I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Hit it, make it green right there. They just have to hit it one time more, it turns green. Gotta get you on, they can hear you.
I think it turns green. I appreciate what the commissioner had to say about the amount of dollars being spent, the amount of dollars that are needed. It also points out something that we passed out to the committee, a letter that shows and indicates the amount of local dollars that are paid annually for maintenance on our roads and our streets. And it totals about $1.3 billion that's taken from laws, from ad valorem, from SPLOST, and from fees that we get locally. It's a huge investment. Cities and counties are participating, just like the state. And I think go back to Mayor Copenhagen's remark about the partnership that continues to grow between the cities, counties, and state government. Otherwise, we all get further and further behind. But I just want to be on the record that we do have something for you to peruse at your leisure. These dollars are taken from something, DOR, Motor Fuel Division, some directly off the list of SPLOST and lost prices. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I think the main point we wanted to make, obviously, is, you'd asked us before, kind of that wants and needs, and my dad told you, you're establishing your wants and needs. We really are trying to boil it down to what we think is needed over the next 20 years.
Because many people in this room from Augusta haven't heard this number. The number, I'm assuming, is still somewhere between 700 million and $1 billion. Would be I know there's you have to define that. But I just want people in the room to understand the magnitude of what you as a commissioner of the DOT think is a reasonable number for you to do your job effectively and efficiently and to the benefit of the public out there. An additional $700 million to $1 billion annually is what you anticipate needing if you were able to do your job.
I think that's that's a number that certainly can be supported. Again, it's not not my role to make that decision, but I can tell you what the needs are. And again, and it really is looking to the legislature and the chambers as well as the cities and counties about what's important. I mean, obviously, keeping our bridges safe. No one's going to let that lapse. We're never going to let that happen. But you're going to either see something's got to give when you've only got a certain amount of money to spend. And so that balancing act about what's important. When we talk to the public, the roadside's very important. They want the grass more and more. Almost the homeowners association, they want it kept at a standard that we probably can't meet. They want the litter picked up, and we understand that. And so that takes a huge investment. Just doing the core functions of pavement preservation is a big number to buy you some more time before you have to resurface a road. And some of the investment there. So there's some mix of some more money for routine maintenance and some money for capital construction and capital maintenance is certainly needed. Again, I think the state, is certainly, we want to make that strong case that transportation is the driving force behind a strong economy. I think you're going to hear that everywhere you go around the state is that the tie between transportation and growth is there. Even though the public many times rates transportation way down low on their list of priorities, they talk about the need for jobs, and they're linked. They're so closely linked, and I think we lose sight of that so often. That transportation is what brings in industry, brings in jobs, as well as supports freight coming from the port and all those activities. And so building that system, but more importantly, maintaining what we already have is going to be critical to the state. And so that number is certainly something that can be supported. It could be even higher than that. Commissioner, do you have a map showing all these freight corridors projects? We do.
Something that we could use, because I think if we're going to try to do something this year, we're going to have to sell this to the taxpayers. And it's going to have to be more than just maintenance. It's going to have to be, are you willing to pay more for better roads, but also for more roads, for quicker commute times? People's lives, they're always in a hurry to get from point A to point B, but when you're tied up in traffic for 1 to 2 hours or 3 hours, trying to go somewhere and you're only going 20 miles per hour to get there, people may be willing to pay more, but I think we have to sell it to them. We have to say, what are you going to get for your money? Not just better bridges. We're going to replace 500 bridges. I don't think they get excited about that. I think they assume they're already paying for 50 cents a gallon.
Sure.
Gas tax, that should be taking care of that already anyway. So in order to sell these new ideas, we have to have a product to say, this is what you're going to get for your money.
Correct.
Maybe in 10 years, you're going to go from where you are today to point B. And so I think at some point we have to develop that. Your map up there on the wall is a good one. Does it, I don't see any new roads in that list. You know, going from east to west across North Georgia, for example, there's a big void there.
Right.
Could there be a proposed project 10 years or 20 years from now that shows a new interstate or a new development highway that's going to relieve traffic congestion in Atlanta? So that's where a lot of the problems are. You look at your map, and everyone that drives in Atlanta knows where the problems are. They're in metro areas. There's metro areas around the state that are congested. When you get outside of those metropolitan areas, you don't have congestion problems. You have other kind of issues. So I think we have to sell a new product, and then we can help build a case for more revenue. So I don't think I can go back home and sell more revenues for better bridge maintenance. You know, I don't think that'll sell.
Until such time as a school bus can't drive across it.
That's
When we
right.
post
Or
a
a fire
bridge
truck.
to the school bus or a fire truck, then all heck breaks loose.
I get it.
And that's a daily issue for us.
I've heard.
Or when say the port side of the house wants to raise container freight, and we say, well, you can do that, but we're going to have to post every bridge in the state, which means that permitted loads can no longer use it. They're going to have to. So there's definitely a catch-22, an undercurrent, as you said, of those decisions to do that. But I agree with you that we have a hard time trying to talk even to this group. What is deferred maintenance? I can come in and tell you I have $400 million worth of deferred maintenance. It really means nothing to you. But when I sit down and show you these are the roads that are on our list to be resurfaced that have fallen below 70, that number that we talked about that need to start doing program. And guess what? I'm not going to get to it for 5 years at the current funding rates. And by the way, in 5 years, something else may bump yours off. And we have those lists today. And that's one of the decisions we made a few years ago is to sit down with elected officials and say, we have more needs for the next 4 years than I have money. And so you might come to me and say, I've got this State Route 60 in Long, it needs to be resurfaced. And we'll say, we agree with you. And it's scheduled for 6 years. And you're going to say, I can't wait that long. That's when it really starts hitting home. But you're right. You almost have to break it down to how does it impact me? And because saying $400 million worth of deferred maintenance really doesn't mean anything anymore.
I heard a conversation a few days ago about a new road around Atlanta. If you built a perimeter.
I don't know what you're talking about.
The point was that it would not necessarily take truck traffic off the roads in Atlanta because a large percentage of those trucks are coming into Atlanta to drop off their goods.
I think a lot of the origin and destination studies and the Department of Freight study validated that really Atlanta is probably one of the largest inland ports in the country right now, and a huge distribution network. So many of the things that are coming by rail or by truck from the port to go to the distribution network coming into Metro Atlanta, it has a huge distribution system around Metro, whether it's Gwinnett or on the south side of Atlanta, which is growing very quickly on 75 and 85 corners. So yeah, the concept that trucks are coming to Atlanta, you can route them around, is not proven to be true in the numbers.
So how many trucks are coming through Georgia to get to Florida or other places that don't necessarily need to come to Atlanta? So how do we avoid coming down 75, 85? And do you know what that number is?
I think the freight, I don't know off the top of my head. The freight study certainly looked at that. It's not as big as like you indicated, it's not as big as people think. They're coming and then distributing out and picking up on both the south side of Atlanta and the north side of Atlanta.
It's like 3,500 or so. They're coming through, which is a big number of trucks.
3,500 per day
Yes.
for the entire state?
They're coming through
Atlanta.
from Florida to Tennessee out.
But they don't need to stop in Atlanta. They're just driving through.
It's not as big as most people think. I think like I said, we're more of an inland port now, an inland hub that people come into.
That number seems awfully low.
The trucks that stop is much higher, but the ones that go from border to border is is lower than what people think.
I don't know how you quantify that, but it'd be an interesting study.
Yeah, the freight study that was done was very detailed and pretty well done. And it really broke down kind of what the freight movements were, both by rail and by truck, and then kind of the whole distribution hub in Metro Atlanta. But then again, knowing where, one of the selling points of our port is where we're positioned, and Atlanta helps with that with the rail access as well as the truck access.
Just to finish up, I just think we need to do something bold, to offer, say this is, a solution. Maybe it's a long-term solution, but this is where we want to get to, and it's going to require some commitment and money, and I think people will buy it. So I think we have to have a big product to sell out there. And I hope we can get there.
Just like, you take it down, you break it down, something like I-85 going to the South Carolina line. I mean, it's weekends, it's no longer just, by time of day, I mean, it's all the time. And so I think the people in that region understand that live it and ride those routes. And such a, when, like you indicated, breaking it down to something that they can see, these are the types of things we need to fund. And even if it's by list or whatever, these are the priorities of the state. I don't think we get disagreement between the legislature, the governor's office, and the Department of Transportation on what those are. And if that's the mission of what we need to do, I think that clearly can be outlined.
Forsyth County's taking a bold step this fall. They're asking the voters to approve a bond referendum of $200 million. And they're going to use part of that money to widen State Route 400.
Correct.
Because people want to get home. They want to get to work quicker and get home quicker. So they see the value in the time on the road. So I think they're going to pass that. I mean, I really do. I think people up there are ready to take that bold step forward and invest. If they know what they're going to get for the money, I think they'll approve it. If they don't believe they'll get it, then I don't think they'll pass it. Don't you agree?
Yeah. Early polling looks good, and to me, there's a lot of eyes on it. I think there's a lot of areas in the state that have decided. They don't care whether it's a state road or a local road. They just know it needs expansion. And they really expect us as government leaders to come together and find a solution. And so what they're doing for Forsyth County will be of the $200 million, 81 million of it goes towards state roads. And then that turns around and leverages another 93 million, I believe is the number, of state and federal dollars. And so it's a way to come together and do those things. And so Georgia 400, the road that we talked about as an example, my explanation is said, we're going to do something about 400. We're going to do it in 20 years, and then it'll probably be a toll road. That's your alternative. If we pass this bond, you'll see orange cones, within 18 months probably?
Something
because the right-of-way is already purchased, and so that's the kind of an impact, and I'm hoping that our constituents will say, this is a common sense way to come together collaboratively and to fix the transportation gridlock that we have up there.
Well, I think that's such an important point, because now under the federal guidelines, Forsyth County happens to be the Atlanta Regional Commission, and they have to have a financially constrained 20-year transportation plan. So, when I get asked by the county commissioners from Forsyth County, why should we be doing this? I said, no one's arguing that is a state responsibility to widen that road. That's not the argument. The argument is the region has decided that there's other higher priorities based on the amount of money that they would reasonably expect over the next 20 years. And so that project's not even in their financially constrained plan. But there's not a person in North Metro, North Fulton, moving forward all the way to Dawson to say that project's not needed. We have those all over the state. And it's not for a lack of need, it's for a lack of being able to fund it.
And that $200 million is on top of another $50 million interchange that we're doing there on 400. So the point is that we're, and I want this panel to hear, I really believe that whatever program or success we come up with, I really think that we need to have those opportunities to help those that are helping themselves. Because we do have communities out there that are willing to pay for some of this to help out the state. But I think those matching funds really, just like the CID that we're doing, as well as this right here, really makes sense to do that and get rid of whose responsibility is it and come together. I know that'll be a challenge, but I hope that the committee will look at that and say, how do we have those areas that really have the ability to help themselves? Let's offer some matching opportunities.
Again, you and I've had the conversation, and I've had it with some other people off to the side, and we continue to do kind of man on the street type things. And I still am amazed at what people think that they're spending towards supporting transportation.
What's that
system.
number? $85?
That's if you drive 12,000 miles state motor fuel. Yeah. But even with the federal piece, you're talking about $170 a year at max, probably for the average person and stuff. So again, we provide a very good service. I think the Reasons Foundation said the other day that we were the 11th or 13th best run agency in the country or whatever in terms of our investment on dollars and stuff. So a lot of things are going on in Georgia DOT. We're just challenged to be able to sustain what we've been able to do in the past.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, we're now, we've got some changes to our agenda, so, but at this time, Mr. Andy Jones, he is here representing the Georgia Oilmen's Association and also is a local business owner. So, thank you, Mr. Jones, we appreciate you taking the time to come.
Thank y'all for letting me come here this morning and talk in front of y'all. I appreciate y'all coming down to Augusta to hold this committee meeting. And let me begin, as Mr. Tudor gets my presentation ready up there, let me begin by saying that I agree with the mayor. We do have some of the best highway infrastructure in Richmond and Columbia and the adjoining counties. We sure do appreciate that over here. The reason that I'm here talking today is something that the chairman brought up, and it is to tell y'all about the difficulties in marketing gasoline on the border city with the tax differential that South Carolina has over us here in Augusta. Again, I'm Andy Jones with Sprint Food Stores. We're a local 15-store convenience store chain located in Richmond, Columbia, McDuffie, and Jefferson counties, and also in Aiken County in South Carolina. My marketing director put this together for me, and she used the word, let's see my formal word, story. And it's not really a story, this is factual data that I wanted to present to y'all today. It's of these two gas stations right here. The first one is closed now. This location is at the corner of I-20 and Washington Road. It's in front of a brand new Whole Foods that opened up last week. As many of y'all know, that they come in here for the golf tournament every year. Washington Road's a very busy road. There's been no medians put in there to disrupt traffic flow. And essentially, there's been no more competition in this area just because there's not enough room for any more gas stations in this area on Washington Road. Clay Boardman, with Boardman Petroleum, was kind enough to give me some data to tell y'all. He sold his chain back in 1998. It's roughly 60 sites that he sold. This was one of the best sites that he had. At the time, it was pumping 4.5 million gallons a year. It was the #1 Phillips 66 site in the nation. And it was also at a time when Georgia had a 3 to 6 cent tax advantage over South Carolina, because not so much the excise tax, but the sales tax. The price of gas was 99 cents, so the sales tax issue was not an issue back then, and we really enjoyed that on the Georgia side of the border. Moving forward to 2010, the site continued to decline from back in 1998, 4.5 million gallons annually. To 981,000 gallons for fiscal year 2010, 940, 2011, 892, down to 845,000 gallons in 2014. That essentially is why the site's closed now. And Circle K sold it to a QSR called PDQ. So moving on to the next slide, this is store number 2. This was also a Boardman site, and I don't have the data on what it was when he sold it back in 1998, but I do have the data on what it's been doing since 2010. You can see the volume growth from in 2010 annually $1,582,000 to 2014 $1,896,000. The volume shifting. People that can save an average fill of 10 gallons, $1.20 is real money to them, especially with the high price of gasoline. This isn't even top. This is just a gas station. This isn't a diesel facility. The taxes are even worse. I think it's around 16 cents a gallon tax advantage South Carolina has over Georgia.
One quick question. How far is this over the line?
Thanks for bringing that up. If you're familiar with Augusta, downtown Augusta, you can go over 13th Street Bridge, which goes over the Savannah River, and it turns into Georgia Avenue as soon as it crosses the river. This is the first site that's probably a quarter to a half mile into North Augusta, South Carolina on the left when you're going in. Effective tax rates on gasoline. This slide shows sort of what we're battling here, and this is not looking at federal tax at all. This is just the excise tax and the full sales tax on a gallon of gasoline here in Georgia, which is 30.4 cents. And the battle we're having is with South Carolina at 16.7. Alabama is at 25, Tennessee is at 24, so I can't speak for those two states or those two, any company that's on the Georgia border of those states. But I would imagine they're having the same difficulties that we're having here in Augusta. And over here is the breakdown on the excise tax and the sales tax breakdown. And then this number is a little bit low because we only factored in 0.5 cent for GUST, which is the Georgia Underground Storage Tax. And now it's 0.3%. So, it is low. I didn't want to go high on any number. I apologize for that. I caught it this morning. I was going over. The next slide essentially is the same thing. I'm not really going to go into it, but Georgia's effective tax rate on gasoline is the 4th highest in the Southeast. Following the gallons and the customers, that's what my company is having to do. The last 2 fueling locations that we built were in Aiken County, South Carolina, as close to the border as I could get. Because we're losing volume in our existing stores, and we don't have any stores that are right on the border, but we're close enough that the slippage is happening. Here's a site that we built in Clearwater, South Carolina. Here's one in beautiful Beach Island, South Carolina. Kind of the investment in South Carolina for my company right now, in addition to the 1 million gallons that are being sold through our gas pumps, Georgia lost a capital investment of $6.5 million on those 2 facilities, and 31 jobs that were created in South Carolina could have been created here in Georgia if we were able to compete with South Carolina somehow differently on tax issues. That's all I have. Any questions or anything? Love to answer.
Ole, you get us this slideshow, please. Mr. Ed. Go, Mark, go ahead and then Ed.
Just a clarification, you mentioned up there you had the state effective tax comparison, and you said it did not include federal.
Correct.
But what component was also the local? Was the local included in that, or in other words, what is the local Augusta tax rate compared to the local tax across the river?
What I wanted all in, because everybody's taxed at the 18.4 federally, but I wanted to show what all in on the state tax and excise tax on a gallon of gasoline.
I understand it. I'm trying to break that down further to see how Georgia compares to the other states as far as the state portion versus the local portion.
They don't have sales tax on theirs. Theirs is a straight excise tax, 16% excise tax. Where that's the confusion I think that we get into is theirs is straight excise and no sales tax on it, where ours is excise and sales tax on a gallon. Yes, sir.
What's their local going to charge?
Sir?
Local government's going to charge South Carolina rate.
Correct.
Ed?
Thank you. I think you've done a pretty good job explaining the problem. The committee's here to try to come up with a solution. And you guys are part of the transportation process. What's the solution?
I can't tell you that. I'm just kind of here. I'm not a politician or an elected official.
I'm neither anymore either.
I leave that to smarter people than I am. But, you know, it is a huge problem, and I've talked to the mayor's office a little bit. It'd be interesting to see the data, and I guess we could get it from the terminals in South Carolina, possibly on the amount of gallons going into destination South Carolina and destination Georgia from the North Augusta terminals. I don't know. I think that'd be pretty interesting to see, to help figure that out. I'm not here to help solve it.
Okay. Maybe Roger.
I'll ask a question. How far do you think that goes into Georgia? You know, the lower rate in South Carolina, how much of an impact, how deep should it go into?
I know that we have sites that we don't have anything past the Bel Air Road interchange, but it has greatly affected our site there. All the way to Thompson, I doubt it would cause issues up there. I don't really have any data. We don't have a location. We have one on the interior site in McDuffie County up in Thompson, but nothing there on the I-20 interchange areas up there. I would say it could affect possibly all the way up in Greensboro, Georgia. You know, I think it would be far enough the way that people may need a bathroom break in Madison if they stopped in North Augusta or you know, one of the exit 5 in South Carolina.
You said you don't have suggestions, you leave it up to folks. That's why you had been your gut feel on how you think we can help resolve some of it. I don't know if we can resolve all of it. What is your gut feel?
The gut feeling is that we passed T-SPLOS here in this part of this transportation corridor. Isn't that what it's called? I think that if Greater Atlanta would do something like that, which they didn't, and you really can't go back and put it on a ballot now, you know, I don't know. It seems like that's what Forsyth may kind of be doing on its own.
And the biggest difference in our area, just because T-Splosh failed miserably where we're at. I mean, it was- It was 75-25. It was lobby hard. But the biggest complaint was my DOT friends and brethren, a lack of potential that they're involved in it. But really most importantly was they felt like they were donors to other people in the larger region. And so I think the reason that this funding has a good chance, it may not pass, but it is very much, it's all within Forsyth County. And so it's all within the county, and they feel like they can control the process.
Another question. If you say, looking at increasing the field tax, it's not a viable solution. What do you say if we decide to do like other states and change the law and say if the local government cannot collect on the field? Then we're going to have the mayor, the county commissioner, the board of education with e-law. They're going to jump in and they're going to have a big fight as to changing something that we put in. And the reason I say that is it was real interesting when we met in Tipton and the guy from Florida talked about the registration fee. For every vehicle registration in Florida, it's a $200 fee just to go to DOT. Now that's if you got an electric car, or you got a scooter, you got a go-kart, and you register, it's a $200 fee. Now, you know, it would be nice if we could do that in Georgia, but then I think all of us, we would have a tea party at the state capitol. And so our dilemma is, how do we get to funding DOT to put us back where we used to be? Now, I was commercial driver for 10 years. I was even the bus charter. We had some of the best roads. When you travel to Texas, you ought to go across 10, you got to get in the passing lane, because if you don't, your passengers don't talk about you all day long because you go bumpity bump up. But the problem now is that if you don't get in the passing lane in Georgia now, you're going bumpity bump. And so we have a real problem. Now, we got one penny that goes into the general treasury. You know, and I'm only one. And I say you can't go to the general public asking them to bite off when you got a penny that is not designated going to transportation and is taking off motor fuel. But at the same time, we as a state gave our local communities an opportunity to raise money, but we should have kept that in-house, and we probably would not be in the situation that we are in. But irregardless, we're in this situation, and so the question comes because you're the voters. You're a business person. When we go up there and talk about it, who's going to get out there and fight against an elected official saying, well, we need to do this in order to maintain, and folks back at home go to raising HELL and say that HELL with it. So that is what we are caught with. I mean, when we talked about it, and the commissioner and many members, we did some things in Georgia. The Olympics came, we wanted to, as a state, to be part of it and make sure it happened. We took $185 million that we were paying debt service from DOT. Called ourselves borrowed and going to pay it back at a later date and never got back. And so, local communities, we used to have what we call our lot book. And we used to sign many county and state contracts, city state contracts. But we don't have the affordability to do that now. With the downturn of the economy trying to get back, we don't have it. So you all need to give us your actual gut feeling on how you feel, because at the end of the day, we got to set the policy. At the end of the day. And so what you have to say means something to us, because we're the ones that got to take it back. Mix it up, put it in the pot, cook it, and then come out with a finished product.
I agree. This is a difficult problem. There needs to be a way. If you just look at it here in Augusta, the reason I brought up the number of gallons going to South Carolina and going to South Carolina destination and going to Georgia destination, there's a lot of money that is currently not coming because people are not buying gas in this area like they once were because of the tax issue, the tax differential. So we're 12 cents, you know, you look at, if you take that one location, 4.5 million down to 800,000 gallons, I would need a calculator to do the math, but if there was a way to shrink the excise tax on just the gasoline portion to keep us competitive with South Carolina, and maybe it wouldn't be on everything, but just on motor fuels. If you look at when everything was designed on motor fuels and sales tax and excise tax, what was gas, 79 cents, 99 cents? Well, now at $3.25 or $3.10, whatever the number is, that's a much larger amount of money that is coming from gasoline and diesel fuel on a per gallon basis in the form of taxes.
I'm Roger Lane, President of Georgia Oilman Association. One of the things we wanted to point out to you, we feel strongly we hit a point of no return on taxing one product to do all the things that DOT needs. We understand, I've been in lobbyists 42 years, I understand you gotta have money, I understand it's always good to tax somebody else and go with their option, not yours. But we can't afford any more motor fuel tax to stay in business in the state of Georgia because you drive the business out. If you go to Dalton, Georgia, you get the same story. If you go to LaGrange, Georgia, you get the same story from Bearwood, Alabama, and then the EPA makes you have a summer blend of gasoline in the LaGrange area that's 22 cents a gallon higher. Gasoline's carrying all the burden it can. And that's the point that we wanted to bring home here today. And I was to say that putting more tax on gasoline is not going to solve the problem because we got people who used to drive to the state of Georgia to buy gas who now drive through the state of Georgia to buy gas. So, Edward, remember, I supported you for
Yes, you did.
I told y'all.
You must not have done a good job.
He did just fine. But you've been around the legislature long enough, Roger, to know that you can't stop something with nothing. You know, if one solution isn't the right solution, but you got a real problem, you got to help come up with another solution. And my request, and I think the committee, other members will agree with me, is that we hear you in terms of the problem that you've laid out. We've heard that from other folks in other parts of the state too. The problem is that we need to figure out a solution for our transportation funding needs over the next 20 years. And it's not enough to simply to say what the problem is for one solution. We need folks coming forward saying, if not this, here's a better plan. And you guys know this. You guys know this business. You guys are servicing those cars and trucks that are on the roads. We need you to be helping to come up with those solutions. That's the only thing I want.
Okay, let's put a 1% sales tax on the state of Georgia, eliminate motor fuel tax so that we get people to stop in the state. So let's put a 1% sales tax on everything else and fund, and the money goes to DOT to fund roads and bridges.
I think I voted for that one.
We got another 1% now. The second motor fuel tax is 3% of the 4%. Take that other penny and put it into DOT where it should have been all the time. Some of us, like David and you, we've been there a long time in Calgary. You know, that should have been second motor fuel tax probably to start. So let's move that and let's do a 1% and let's not tax one product to death. Let's get people to drive to Georgia to do business instead of through Georgia.
Roger, what's the sales tax in South Carolina?
There is no sales tax on gasoline.
I'm talking about on any goods. You buy a lawnmower at 7%. Okay, so you have an 8% sales tax here now, I'm guessing? So do you not have that same argument? People are driving across the bridge to buy lawnmowers at the hardware store? Home Depot over in South Carolina is selling lawnmowers to people in Georgia because they're saving 1%. If you raise it again, you raise it to 9% in Augusta, and then you have a 2% delta. Aren't those retailers going to come in here next month? You start hollering at our commissioners and our mayors. I think I understand what you're saying, but I think you create another argument on the same, the same topic.
If I could keep you from raising motor fuel tax, I would hope they could keep you from raising that, but all not saying that.
Everybody be happy. But I'm not against what you're saying. I'm just asking. I didn't know what the sales tax was in South Carolina. If it truly is 7% there, and it's already 8% here, I guess you could, keep it at 8%. The rest of the state of Georgia go to 8%. You still have a 1% increase already over the people across the bridge. You're using that across the bridge. I guess that's the state line.
Yes.
So does that have an effect? I don't know if there's any retailers in the room that would argue for or against that theory. I would have to think that somebody would say it would. If it's a big ticket item, if you bought a $5,000 lawnmower, that's quite a good amount. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
We also have Mr. Tudor here. He was helping. He's with the Convenience Store Association as well. Does a good job. At this time, Mr. Cross, Chairman of Columbia County.
We've had a lot of words this morning. I hope people are still listening somewhat. It's tough after a while. I know y'all put up with these everywhere you go across the state. Columbia County just wants to express our appreciation for all of you for the TIA program. It's been a windfall for us. It's kind of like Christmas every month instead of just one, with the road work that's going on in this region. There's also the discretionary money that comes along with it. It probably advanced our road needs and program in Columbia County about 12 to 15 years. There's no question. And for your item about the local referendum to do something, we did that 5 years ago with our SPOS program and putting $38 million in the widening of Washington Road because we looked ahead that these boys would not be able to fund it, and it's a critical need. It's a very critical need. And so that work is under contract, has been led by DOT with our input, with our financing from the SPOS program, not the T-SPOS, and is under construction for a much-needed improvement. So we did that, and the people voted on it and accepted it. And we caught a lot of criticism that you're wasting county money on a state road. Well, if you got needs, it don't matter who owns the road, the need's there. So that's something you need to do. But again, this program has been extremely good for this region. We are a donor county. Augusta Richmond is a donor county. That was part of the program going in. We said, it's the only thing we have to work with to look toward transportation needs. Let's make the best of what's here. Not what we don't like, not what may come in 5 years, but what's here today. And I think we have. Big Band 1 projects, even more projects in Band 2. We know the collections are down, but collections were a projection. They could go back up, even with a reduced scope. This is a great thing for this region, and I thank all of you for putting that together after many years of trying to come up with a program, just like you're trying to come up with a program now for the rest of the state. We had discussion last night at dinner, Ms. Gooch, the possibility of a mileage tax. One of the reasons I was so in favor of the T-SPLOST was it's a consumer-based flat rate tax. You don't buy nothing, you don't pay the tax. I'm not so sure that y'all are not going to be faced with the situation of if you drive on the road, you're going to pay for the road maintenance and infrastructure. I'm not saying that's the best alternative, but I'm saying it is certainly, and it's kind of leading to the point of what you said about Florida and the registration fees and those other fees. I'm not as crazy about that because I've been a collector of old cars, and at one point I had 23 of them that sat in the warehouse 90% of the time. But if I put them on the road and the mileage goes up, I'd be glad to pay the cost. But again, that's basically all I got. We got a great team of our engineers and those of Augusta DOT with Todd Long and Mike over, just done a tremendous job. Jimmy Smith, all top flight people with the knowledge to get things done if we can get the funding straight out.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask you one question before you go. You know, as Orly, Roger, we call him Orly, I apologize for that.
I wonder why.
And stated, and it's something that's, you know, that I've thought about too, is, you know, looking at a statewide 1 cent. Let me ask you a question. As someone that has passed it and has it, and first of all, we thank you for your leadership in that, taking the initiative. Do you think, hypothetically right now, if we were to go in and put in a 1 cent statewide, what should we do in the regions that passed it? Should we exempt you from that 1 cent for that period of 10 years? Or, and say after that point, if you go back in and re-up it, then you realize that you're going to have 1 cent above that? Or should we leave it as is? I mean, I would really be interested to hear what you have to say concerning that.
Well, of course, there's going to be the regions that pass, and I have to be forthright. Columbia County didn't vote for it, but the regional concept carries. And we knew there's a possibility all along. And that's what we accepted to go ahead and even promote it when there was some opposition to it. But there's going to be stiff opposition to take a 10-year program that's 2 or 3 years in and then add something to it. So I think definitely you'd have to exempt those regions that already have that. And it makes a more level playing field for statewide than it currently is now as far as the sales tax is concerned. Now, I can't say with the problem way out going across the state line. But, you know, something's got to be done one way or the other, and that's, I think it's so immediate that, you know, the burden falls on y'all to make some suggestion and take the chances on that it'll go, you know, across the state with all the legislative delegations. But yes, I think it should. I'm not opposed to the 1 cent because, again, it's a flat rate, consumer-based tax, even though it's on consumers that are not really burning up the roadways. So maybe a combination of those kind of things.
And that there may be a combination within there of some other things, but we do thank you for that, and that's something that we've got to think about. But thank you so much, because we've said all along, or I have, that we want to make sure we protect those regions that took the foresight, stepped forward, and took that leadership in the past.
Well, I think that's only fair, considering we took some flack.
Sure.
You know, in that program, our Chamber of Commerce people here took a ton of flack, Augusta Region, Richmond Development Authority, all, and the business community that knew it was a good idea. But you're always going to get that. There's nothing we do, or you do, that's going to have 100% support.
Thank you.
We're there to work with you with whatever way we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, let's see, Mr. Mike Dover. You're going to give us an overview of the Savannah Region 10.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
On your agenda, with Mike Dover and Phil Wall, who is the oversight chairman for the TIA program.
Yes, sir.
We kind of wanted them as a panel up here to
Okay.
talk with you, and then questions could be asked to them.
Sure, Phil Wall and Ron Crawford, don't come up, please.
Go back up that way.
And we'll have a panel.
None of the microphone.
And we'll let, I don't know which one of you wants to be
Mike.
spoken.
Let Mike handle it.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mike.
I'll start off. I'm an employee of Georgia Department of Transportation, and I manage the Transportation Investment Act program 2010. It is 2010, so it has been in place 4 years since we're in 2014. So I just got some quick overview notes of the whole program, not specifically the CSRA region. So far, as of yesterday, we've received collections at the end of every month. Just to receive those collections, there's been a total for the program of $223 million collected. $167 million, now this program started in January of 2013 with collections. $167 million goes towards the projects on the approved investment list, and the local governments in 46 counties and over 100 and some odd cities within those regions are splitting out by the BART formula $55 million. So we're well on our way to delivering this particular program. Of course, by the legislation, Georgia Department of Transportation, you heard before, is responsible for delivering this program for all the projects on the approved investment list, 75%. The 25% goes directly from Department of Revenue to Georgia State Finance and Investment Commission, and then is distributed outside of DOT. It does not go through Georgia DOT to all those local governments in the region. We talked a little bit about, Chairman Cross talked about revenues. We recognized very early on how revenues were behaving, if you will, and we put policies and procedures for project management, scope, schedule, and budget in place to account for that. Still, given the fact that how revenues are behaving, there's still $223 million that's been collected for transportation projects within those three particular regions. So again, we are managing that actively. It's very active management of this program, of the projects within this particular program, and to make sure that the 10-year program, 18 to 19 to 20 months into it, is still successful at the end of 10 years. And again, it's Georgia DOT's responsibility by the legislation to deliver the stated benefit of those particular projects on the approved investment list. So far, we've delivered over 100 projects. We've left those 100 projects for construction. You're aware the Heart of Georgia has over 700 projects in their particular region. So we have partnered as well with Columbia County on delivering their projects. And we've partnered with the City of Augusta and Richland County. And the legislation allows the local governments to deliver their projects. And the City of Augusta is delivering 26 of their projects within bandwidth. You heard me talk a little bit about the band. So the surprising success of the program, what I think is 25% discretionary money. The 75% is constrained with project lists and project budgets. That 25% by legislation goes to those local governments. The local governments have the ability to spend that 25% on projects, transportation projects, very broad definition of transportation projects within their cities and their counties. So I think, surprisingly, the success of the program is really built on that 25% discretionary money. So I'll let these other gentlemen talk a little bit about Ms. Crowell.
Let me just add one thing. Your consideration for whatever program, and I failed to mention it might get a good job of it, the discretionary money is 25% is as important as the 75%. Because people call and say, our children are walking in the weeds going to school. You can take that and put in a sidewalk. We've extended some bike paths. We've repaved some roads. We've done almost anything you can think of in a county that gives you in my estimation, a windfall to work with that can meet direct needs that the people bring up. So any program you do, and I don't know how you incorporate it in certain programs, that discretionary money is a big item in getting voter support and cooperation to approve it.
I'd like to ask you a question. Because here you have that discretionary money, and you'll have voted and utilized transportation dollars the way they're designed. Question, because of the issue that you brought up about the tax rate. Would it be of any benefit if you had the ability, and I don't want my local government people to get scared here, but if you had the ability, when your local sales tax, if you had the ability to make that an optional sales tax, you all decide, or the local government decide, and because it's a tax on motor fuel, that the decision was if you wanted to lower your effective tax rate in order to bring your gasoline price down to be more competitive, that you had to choose whether that part of the sales tax is going to the transportation project. The point here is that you may decide we can keep more revenue in Georgia by only charging 1%, take this up, 1% sales tax, local sales tax, and let's say that equates to keep your gasoline price competitive. But that 1%, in exchange for that, has to go to transportation projects. So you have an option to do that. That way you're more in control of comparing your competitive market prices by determining whether you want to tax that. In your particular case, you may have the ability to make that tax up, because we still know there's needs. You make that tax up by using the discretionary funding or some other funding stream. Because we know you probably need the revenue anyway, but it's a shift. We're talking about different buckets. We're just trying to come up with solutions, and I'm just saying you are in a unique situation right here because of the state line, and we're trying to address it. We're giving you some flexibility at the local level to do that. Would that be of any benefit?
It certainly could be. The problem is when you take revenue from one source, you got to make it up somewhere else. Now, Columbia County is fortunate in that we've been one of the top 3 or 4 highest growth counties in the state for many years. Adding 4,000 people, 3.5–4% annual growth for a good many years. And with all the additions at Fort Gordon, that's going to probably increase a little bit. So we have other avenues with the property tax and more developed property. But if you take the 1 cent that comes in, and you take it out of operation and maintenance, you have to find another source for that money. Now, it's possible we could do that, but I would say in counties of lesser growth, it's going to be extremely difficult to do that.
But you've already increased it with the 1 cent TIA. That's all. I'm not trying to tell you where you take it from or you don't take it from. And I would agree with you. The comparison to Florida, we're maybe getting Florida maybe getting 4 times the amount of transportation dollars, but they also have no state income tax.
Right.
So we all know there's buckets out there. I'm just trying to give you the opportunity that if you had the flexibility, if the sale of gasoline was something that was very important to you, and you had the ability to shift that tax to another way, would that be an advantage to you?
Anytime you have flexibility, it is definitely an advantage. There's no question about that. And that's one thing that you're very rigid in the 75% of TIA, but you're very flexible in 25%. And so if you had options on tax, that would certainly be a benefit. Now, whether the public agreed that they want to do that would be the referendum question.
Chairman Gooch and Chairman Roberts, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak for you. I represent the CSRA Region's Citizen Review Panel, and that panel of 5 individuals has been appointed by the Lieutenant Governor and Speaker, and I think those 2 gentlemen put together the dream team of Citizen Review Panel, in my opinion. I serve in my paid job as the Market President for First Community Bank, and James Kendrick, who is my co-chair,
has responsibility for a small business here locally and is in the construction blueprint business. We have Mark Ivy from Columbia County, who is a Georgia Tech engineer, home builder, developer. We have Ben Tarbutton from Washington County, short line railroad operator, certainly knows a little bit about transportation. James Alfred, who is from McDuffie County. He has a company that does land and forestry management. So, you know, you can see that we've got people that have knowledge in their own lines of business, but each one of us are very active in our communities and have a passion for assuring that the fiduciary responsibility that we're given as a panel to look at the program and to seek input from the public and to report on that input, and also to review the job that the DOT and local engineers and local governments are doing for that 75%. That's what we're charged with. We're not charged with the discretionary portion of the TIA funds, but we do have the responsibility for making sure that those funds that are being collected are being spent in accordance with the Transportation Act, and that Mr. Dover and the local government officials and engineers do their job in accordance with the will of the taxpayer. So I do want to make a comment, because I will state that over the last year and a half, Mr. Dover and his team have been very, very easy to work with, forthright with any information we've asked for. They provided excellent assistance to our questions, and the jobs that are underway and the jobs that are being delivered are done with the highest level of professionalism. So our committee, we presented a report at the end of the year to both Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker that attested to our experience in the first portion of the program last year. And, of course, year to date, we're going to be getting a report. Our two meetings that we've had this year, we had one in Augusta, Richmond County, another in Columbia County. Both those public meetings had input and attendance with the local government officials and citizens. And we will have our third meeting of the year in November 6th in McDuffie County. So that's how we operate. We feel like it's a great part of this, the way you structured this Transportation Investment Act to include a oversight of the citizens and have that opportunity to comment and provide feedback to the both houses of the government to make sure this thing is being done right.
Thank you all. Is any committee member have a question? All right, that means y'all done a great job. Thank y'all. At this time, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break for everybody. 5-minute break, and then we'll get back at it. So, all right. They're going to talk to us about the TIA project delivery.
I'm Steve Cass with the City of Augusta, Assistant Director of Engineering, also Deputy Administrator. You know, we first were approached in 2010 about the TIA. I don't want to parlay on what Keith was talking. You know, we're a relatively urbanized area. You know, our needs are not necessarily roadway expansion like Columbia County. But you're looking at what Keith was talking about with the bridges. You know, how many bridges are in deferred maintenance or going to be replaced or upgraded. So for our TIA program, we've got seven of those bridges, you know, would be at the end of the line or somewhere waiting in line. That wouldn't happen without it. And he said the oldest bridge he's got is 112 years old. Our oldest
bridge is 100 years old, and it's on the list, and it's not for replacement. Upgrade, not upgrade the bridge, but we're going to restore it. It's the Butts Bridge. I don't know if you all are familiar with the story of the Butts Bridge, but it's Admiral Butt is on the Titanic, and that's the first memorial to a Titanic victim in the United States, and it's the only one in the state of Georgia. That historic nature of that bridge, we couldn't do that under federal funds the way it needs to be done as far as bringing that bridge back to what its former glory was. So we needed to. We needed some sort of local type money for that. In addition, we have an aging stormwater system along. In addition to cars, roads carry your stormwater. Both in the pipes and in the ground, a lot of our stuff downtown is over 100 years old. We're out of brick, no mortar. It's held together with friction until it collapses all of a sudden, and you all get calls, and then you get a surprise capital project that's unfunded and unplanned. So some of our TIA projects within that is to look at rebuilding these roads from the ground up, to upgrade the storm system, to help us as we get the challenges of not only providing a roadway network, but an efficient stormwater system to address flood. In addition to that, we're looking at a lot of pedestrian improvements. With our discretionary funds, we're able to increase maintenance. The mowing, I can't underscore enough what Keith was saying. Mowing interstates twice a year, and our roadways twice a year is not enough. If you look at your transportation system, that's the first and last impression people get as they enter and leave your city and your state. And that's what the investors are seeing if they're bringing jobs and thinking about even moving or relocating to Georgia. They see that, I see it when I drive through other states, and you kind of look, and if it looks shoddy, you kind of have an impression that you see there of those folks. But for that, TIA has helped supplement that. We got the same challenges out of our general fund for, in competition with those dollars. And we're not able to always get them through the discretionary fund as well as the project-based funds. We're able to address some of these needs long term. And hopefully, I'm hoping that we'll pass another one in 10 years when this continue. I think that's the way for the future. And that, a successful state and city is going to be one that doesn't rely on federal dollars because that stuff's disappearing. As you all probably see. So with that said, I pass it over to Matt Flocker.
Like Steve said, we're in a different boat in Richmond County, the city of Augusta. They're working on a build-out system where we're building ours. As Chairman Cross said earlier, we're growing quite heavily. We're 4.5% probably this year. Robert, about 4.5%, so we're growing continuously. The Ford's bringing a lot of growth to us. So we're having to widen our existing roads. We've got a lot of two-lane roads that we're using this constrained money to do our major improvements to. If it was not for this TIA, we'd be behind the 8 ball. We had no way of doing this. Chairman mentioned we picked up the Washington Road project, which was a $30 million project out of our SPLOST dollars. That was everything I get to do out of SPLOST for this SPLOST project for transportation. I mean, my hands are tied. I've got no other money to do any kind of construction for roads if it were not for the TIA. So that's a major help to Columbia County to advance us to keep up with the growing population. We haven't got into the meat of it yet from our standpoint. We had one Band 1 project, Riverwatch Parkway, which DOT's handling for us. They started the design years ago. They did all the right-of-way, they did all the engineering. So we let them continue with it. But we did apply to take over our Band 2 projects. And I received the contract from Tim Matthews last night, so we're looking forward to executing those agreements and jumping this and taking hold of these projects and then getting them completed in a timely manner and hopefully under budget. But the discretionary money has been a major benefit to us. Having that 25% has allowed us to do things that we couldn't do in the past. Like the chairman mentioned, we get calls weekly about our school routes. Come out and put a sidewalk, please. Our kids are walking the tall grass, and we're able to do that now. We're able to address speeding issues. We have a new school that had a road with a lot of speeding going on, a lot of kids trying to cross the intersection. We were able to go out and put in a mini roundabout to slow traffic down, entering the school to help the children get across the street safely. Before we wouldn't have the money to do that. So DMS signs, we put up a DMS project and we put up 6 signs throughout the county using our discretionary money. Again, would not have the funding if it were not for this discretionary. So it's allowed us to do a lot of things. We've also picked up where Steve was talking about the grass cutting. We're stepping up and we're doing a lot of that on state routes, because we understand that there's no way that we can expect Jimmy to send his crews down or Rodney to send his crews down once a month to cut the grass. So we're doing it now. We're using that funding to pay to go out there and keep our main gateways, as we call them, manicured. We're doing State Route 28, we're doing Lewiston Road at the Gateway, Jimmy Dice Parkway. So we're stepping out there and trying to keep those things looking good. The T has been a great success for us as far as allowing us to do things like this. If it was not for this, we'd be in the same boat as everybody else in the state, just lots of wants and no money. So it's been a great success.
Apologize for being late. I was trying to get me a bottle of water. I'm a little parched, but I'm Jimmy Smith. I'm the Public District Engineer for the Georgia Department of Transportation District 2. We cover 27 counties in the eastern central part of the state out of my office in Temple. I'm fortunate enough to have 19 counties that passed the TIA. I have 13 in the CSRA, an additional 6 in the heart of Georgia regional district that passed TIA. From a GDOT man's point of view, it's been a blessing, really and truly it has. We've seen more things happen in my district than we have in a lot of other places. The ability of the local governments to come in and help us is a godsend. I'm sitting here flanked with two special individuals to me. They're professional cohorts, of course, but they're very close personal friends too. And we've been so fortunate to get this. The discretionary money, I want to reiterate what Mike spoke about. I truly believe that has been the selling point of this. I live in Washington County, about an hour and a half from here. Washington County paid 2 roads last year with their discretionary money, 2 of their major county roads. And, they probably would not have paid those, at least with the section that they were able to put on them had they not had that discretionary money. It's been very helpful. One thing too that the TIA has allowed us to do is it's allowed us from GDOT perspective, from a regional standpoint, to advance projects that we simply didn't have the money for. We're going to break ground. I don't want to steal in Mr. Grafton's thunder here, but we're going to have a groundbreaking on Winter Springs Road this afternoon after this meeting is over. And, that's one of the projects that had blended money, what we call blended, had both federal money and TIA money in it. And without the TIA money, we would not have been letting that project down. Old Petersburg Road's been in the books now for at least 15 years that I'm aware of. We just recently let it, and it's going wide open out here in Columbia County. We're going to finish up Riverwatch Parkway and tie downtown Augusta into Columbia County, major thoroughfare, 4-lane divided highway all the way in. It's had so many good things, and I don't know the negative thing that's come up out of it. The only negative thing that you might say is, there's an awful lot of road construction going on from the public's point of view. I heard a friend of mine last week say, I think we bought every orange cone and barrel there is to be made. Well, I got news for you. You hadn't seen next year. Wait till it comes around, and a lot of these bigger projects really start coming in and band one and start getting let. We're going to have to buy some more cones, more barrels, because we're going to be doing a lot here in the Augusta area with some more major projects that are coming on next year to be let. From the smaller counties' perspectives, Little Glasscock County, they've reaped some benefits from discretionary money. I have a lot of rural counties, Jefferson County. I was fortunate enough to go over there last week and speak to the Chamber of Commerce in Jefferson County to tell them how the TIA was helping them. They had some great folks. Public citizens came out and posed some questions of us, and we were very fortunate to be able to answer those, and I think we were very well received. And the public's perspective, for at least ways from my point of view, has been very good.
Thank y'all. Any questions?
Just one. Real quick, Mr. Chairman. Which counties voted no in your area?
Columbia County.
Columbia County.
Do you think if Columbia County could vote now, seeing what progress it's made, would you vote yes?
I would like to say yes. I can't comment. We are a lot of, Columbia County has a lot of Band 2 projects. and some band-free projects. The only project they're seeing out of Band 1 is the Riverwatch project, and they're seeing our discretionary work. I would hope that the work we've done so far shows them they are getting the value of this T-SPLOST in their area. It's not going to Atlanta like most people thought these regional dollars would. So I would hope they would see the benefit of it. I would hope they would vote yes.
Let me put it this way, that how much additional money is Columbia County getting on that 25%?
About $2 million a year right now, based on the collection we're taking in today, about $2 million a year coming in, which that $2 million, just to kind of put in perspective, that's my maintenance budget for an entire year that's coming out of my M&O, out of my property taxes. So I'm doubling that money right there just from discretionary every year.
I'll get three. Three. Yeah, what was the projection for a year? Go ahead and answer. Representative Burke.
I just talked to the financial folks. There was some projection, I think, about 3.6 million. We're down on collections. There was some changes in the tax law that affected that collection that happened subsequent to the tax of TIA. That number is a little bit skewed from the energy, the manufacturer's energy cut, and then also some stuff out in the rural farm area, which impacted income tax collection.
All right, thank y'all very much. Ms. Sue Parr from the Augusta Metro Chamber of Commerce and Ms. Tammy Shepard from the Columbia County Chamber of Commerce. They're going to bring us a business community perspective of the TIA. Thank y'all.
Good morning, Senator Gooch, Representative Roberts. We appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning and talk to you and provide some comments on the TIA as one of 3 regions in the state of Georgia that passed it. We're very proud of that, but we also want to make sure that we share the story because we don't think it was a fluke. We worked very hard for it, and we want to be able to share that information with you this morning. We have a couple different comments regarding 4 components that I see as essential to really understanding TIA. TIA is a good piece of legislation. I think that we should be all very proud that we played a role in that. And I say all of us because the Augusta Metro Chamber, prior to TIA passing in 2010, was watching very closely in terms of what we were going to do as a state for transportation. We understood long before 2010 that there was a perfect storm brewing in terms of our ability to fund transportation in the state of Georgia. So when the TIA legislation was being discussed, we were paying very close attention and very interested in terms of its concept and design and what we followed. I can also say that as a chamber here in Georgia, and in speaking with my counterparts nationwide, that we are the envy of a lot of states that have developed a localized transportation funding mechanism that has been successful. So I don't think that we should shortchange ourselves in terms of design of the TIA legislation. Everything has flaws and unintended consequences, but by and large, what I hope that we can share with you today, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about TIA, is really what works best about it. So if I may, I'd like to go through a couple components in terms of how TIA was conceptualized that I think really makes it work. First of all, it's a SPLOST. People in Georgia understand SPLOST. They get it. And they also understand the idea of a broad-based consumption tax. We are very fortunate in our area as a border city, and there's many things about being a border city that's positive and negative, but here, we, plus being a very large visitor town, tourist town, about 40% of our sales tax is paid by people who don't even live here. So we are the beneficiary of that as well, being a border city and being a high tourism area. So when you think about SPLOST for our community, people inherently understand that that means spreading that cost over much more than just its citizens that live here. We also think SPLOST, the design of it and the way TIA was conceptualized, was important in that it was a referendum. We felt that each community has the right, especially for a localized transportation bill, to approve it or not. And so we we're happy to see TIA legislation in that regard. People also like to know what they're buying, and that's, again, comes back to the concept of a SPLOST. They want to know what they're going to get in return for their money. They also saw the value of regional planning, and I say that because early on, some of the discussions about TIA were more of a microcosm of one or maybe two counties. And I can say that the 13 counties, while at first was different in terms of we had to get our arms around that, when you look at the economies of scale, in some of our counties being very rural, some of our more centralized urban areas, there's really the sharing and the economies of scale of all of this funding that is coming into the TIA that really makes it work, especially with the discretionary funding, which really was the stroke of genius, I think, in terms of the TIA legislation. One of the things that we really felt was important in the legislation was the oversight and accountability. And you heard from Mr. Phil Wall, who serves as the chairman for the Citizens Review Panel. They liked to know that their money was going to stay local. We were very impressed with the legislation in that none of the money was going to go back to Atlanta and come back to us. Just an accountability feature and just really emphasizing the fact that this was our money and it was our roads. In fact, that was one of our signs. And again, the discretionary funding was really the stroke of genius. Moving on, after the TIA legislation passed, we were obviously very interested in understanding how the constrained project list would work and what our projections were for the 10-year time period. We are very fortunate here in our community to have a CSRI Regional Commission that really had the staff. Andy Crossan is here and his team, and I have to say Chairman Cross and the members of our roundtable were really did great work. At the end of the day, this was not going to work unless there was a project list that suited everyone and everyone got something out of it. And yet there was also some visionary components to it. Steve talked a lot about our urban area and the aging infrastructure. Columbia County, we knew their interest was very heavy, expanding county, a lot of commuter corridors that needed to be addressed. So we watched that process very closely, and I think we had a wonderful roundtable and executive committee of the roundtable and staff support to that roundtable that really ended up being a tremendous project list. We also thought that there was good regional representation in the process. Every city, every county had an opportunity to weigh in on that, and of course, GDOT was very instrumental in the process in helping us identify projects that could be leveraged with federal dollars. That was a component also in being able to get TIA passed. As I said earlier, I think the projects really had to resonate, and what we did in terms of advocating for the T-SLOST was help those projects come to life for people. For example, we have over $100 million that is going into our downtown footprint. And when we look at all of the opportunity that $100 million provides in urban downtown renewal, it was really a spark, I think, that we were able to connect with people and help them see some of our major corridors downtown transform and not just necessarily look at these projects as just paving roads and putting sewers in, but how can we take these roads and main corridors and make them different and make them better. We also, of course, besides engaging the business community, and Tammy and I represent over 2,000 businesses and organizations collectively in our region, we also had to get the support of our elected officials. I think it was, we were quite a united team here in this region. All of the members of our delegations were very much in support of TIA. Our mayor, many of our commissioners, one of our commissioners in Augusta-Richmond County served with Chairman Cross as a member of the executive committee, so there was a great team effort. We didn't profess that TIA was going to solve everything. I think a lot of counties or a lot of regions in the state of Georgia may have felt that this was going to be a silver bullet. And we never characterized this as a silver bullet. We only really ever saw this TIA as a localized tool. It was going to be a tool in our toolbox for transportation funding. So I think that not overpromising was something that we were able to do effectively by saying that this is something that we can do right now, that we can accelerate projects, that we can improve maintenance, as you've heard from Columbia County and Augusta-Richmond County. We also talked a lot about the old funding models. I think it's 1930s is when the gas tax was first utilized. It's old, it's broken. It wasn't hard to make the case that our gas transportation system is broken, either at the federal level. And I also think that people in our region inherently understood that Georgia has grown at a rate faster than many other states and has really found itself in a situation where we have not perhaps invested as fast as our growth population. I also think that one of the prime reasons for people for voting for this is, again, goes back to a typical SPLOST. It's an end date. It goes away after 10 years. And I don't think 10 years is too short of a time. I know it's been suggested that maybe that is longer, needs to be shorter. I would suggest that when you look at our 54 projects in Augusta-Richmond County, I don't know how you could do that in less than 10 years. And I think people don't expect transportation projects to be done in 2 or 3. I think what they want is a continuous process of improvement. And I think our banded projects over 10 years will provide that. All of our downtown projects, as I mentioned, are all banded in the last 3 years of the 10 years. And of course, all the money stayed local. I think if I could just offer a few suggestions in terms of TIA. I think that if it is considered by the committee that TIA should continue to be a tool, which we believe obviously it should be, and if there is another opportunity for other regions in our state to do TIA, that a one go date for all of the regions in the state is probably not the best thing. I think what we found during our campaign was that we were not only talking about a local campaign like we would be for a SLOSS as to whether we build a new performing arts center. We were battling that, but we were also battling the overtones of statewide sentiments in other regions. And so I think that when you're talking about a localized SLOSS, as we are, that region needs to be able to not compete on a statewide basis with other sentiments. And of course, you know, I think that would help. I also think that you know, there's some punitive elements to TIA that I don't know that they prove to be as much of an incentive as what might have been considered in the original legislation. And I also think that because the discretionary funding is such an important part of this, that there may be some flexibility in terms of how much is in a constrained list and how much is in a discretionary list, especially when the regions might be more rural than what ours are. That would conclude my comments, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, Sue covered everything very well, and we have worked very much as a team. Oh, I'm sorry.
Ma'am, you're going, they're recording.
As I mentioned, Sue covered it very well, and we worked very much as a team for the TIA advocacy role that the chamber plays. And we felt like educating our residents and business owners was just key to this. And when you were able to explain the piece of legislation, because it was a complicated piece of legislation, when you could explain it to different groups, and believe me, we've made presentations after presentation, people understood it, and they understood that it was their money. They got to choose or approve of these projects that were picked for our region and why they were good for our region. And they also saw it as an investment in their future, whether it was jobs, their time. Their time is money in their jobs. And if their commuting patterns cut down on their time by whether widening roads or improving roads, they understood it. But I think for our region, it was was just really an educational piece. And once, again, you explained that and groups understood it. I had an 80-year-old lady at a Grovetown Lions Club meeting said, this is a no-brainer. And so, it was if she grasped what this legislation was, I think a lot of it is just, again, putting it back out there to other regions and letting them understand that it is their money, it's their control, and then to then make an investment in their future. And so, again, Sue covered all of the areas very well. For Columbia County, although it did not pass vote to vote, those votes that did give a yes vote counted as for a total win for our region. And I think, again, it was just as many people that we could educate, they did vote yes, and so that was very important. For, again, Columbia County being a high-growth area, the 8 projects picked by Chairman Cross and the roundtable were key because we knew we've grown 35,000 residents in the last 10 years. This was a 10-year vote, knowing they expected a 35,000 additional new residents over another 10-year period. Again, for our 8 projects in Columbia County being major road widening projects. So, as Sue said, TIA does work. It's just how well is it communicated to the business owners. It is also the fairest tax possible. You are only going to spend what you make, hopefully, and so it's in proportion to that you would be taxed. And it is, again, for whatever you buy. So it's not just put on business owners or residents. It would be put on anyone who would buy anything in your region. So, again, we think TIA works, and I appreciate your listening to our comments today.
Thank you. Yeah, I think after I had drafted about number 600 on that, it was about a foot high on my desk of all the different drafts of TIA. So we were glad to finally get it worked out. Any other questions? Thank y'all, and thank y'all for your support and work. We appreciate that. Mr. Parker. Keith Parker is here with us today. Good morning. Did you ride the MARTA bus over here? Yes. Did you get on the train and make it here?
We're taking quite a few trains.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. We appreciate it.
Well, good morning. I think they're pulling up the presentation for us, and I do appreciate the opportunity to come tell you a little bit about what's going on with the transit system in the Atlanta region. Certainly want to give regards to Mr. Gooch, who serves on the oversight committee that provides oversight to MARTA, and to make sure I say everything just right, because if I get everything wrong, I'm sure he will hold us honest. I also want to give acknowledgement to Dave Williams, who's sitting in for Hale Mountain. Dave has worked with us on a number of major projects over time. So, just the purpose of this presentation is to give you an overview of what's happening with your transit system, and also to give a couple of suggestions about how we can move forward, and then answer the questions you may have. Is it on for a second? All right, looks like we're a little bit off, but I'll go ahead and get started. At a glance, the transit authority in the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority is 35 years old. As of June 30, that marked the anniversary, the 35th anniversary of both having bus and rail service. We're the 9th largest transit system in the nation, carrying over 400,000 people per day with a huge economic impact. Well, I think we passed these out, so until we get the technology piece figured out, if you'll follow along on the handout. We have an enormous economic impact in the Atlanta region and statewide. It's just under 8,000 jobs in the Fulton DeKalb County area, either directly supported or indirectly supported by the transit authority. 25,000 jobs statewide, and a statewide economic impact of over $1 billion. And these are stats that were put together by Georgia State University. The agency's overall economic impact is about is very similar in the Atlanta region to the hospitality industry. And in fact, about 14 of the 18 fastest growing industry sectors in the Atlanta market are heavily reliant on MARTA for its transportation needs in some form or another. And the other place where we have a major impact is on the tourism industry and the convention business and so forth. The Atlanta, of course, the Atlanta airport is one of the biggest, the busiest in the nation, and the service we provide to that airport is perhaps the best in the entire country, where you can go from baggage claim to a MARTA platform in less than 4 minutes. And that's the best we've seen anywhere in the nation. If you use the airport in Chicago and try to get on the transit system there, or use the transit system in DC, it takes you a considerably longer period of time to get to the baggage claim area and onto your destination. And by my own estimations, where my office is, it's about a $45 cab ride from the airport to the Lindbergh offices where we work out of, versus a $2.50 MARTA charge, where you'll be pretty much guaranteed getting there in about 30 minutes. So amongst the very best. But MARTA has gone through a very tough period. When you go back to the recession of 2008, 2009, this agency was heavily reliant on sales tax, saw its revenues dramatically impacted. And where we saw the results end up is we had about, at that time, over 5,000 employees. We had a significant layoff, and we're now down to around 4,500 employees. Instituted salary and wage freezes, reduced the bus network by about a third. So we went from 131 bus routes down to 91. Dramatically increased the headways, the wait time in between buses and trains, and closed down some of the restrooms. All of this led to a very negative perception of the transit system. In fact, we do an analysis that shows what our media coverage is like during every quarter and then 6-month period. And what we found was the 6 months leading up literally to my hiring, including my hiring, there was an enormous amount of negative coverage for MARTA. That if an agency wanted to take out and purchase that negative coverage, they'd have to spend several $1 million with media to buy the amount of negative coverage we were receiving as a transit system. And during that period, by the way, while we were cutting service, closing restrooms, and all these other things, we raised fares more than any other large transit system in the nation, by about 42%. Now, fast forward. We are doing much better. MARTA, I think, can safely say it's a very solid steward of financial resources. We're committed to excellence in every way. Our slogan now is routine excellence, and that's what we want to provide to all of our customers, our employees, and all of our stakeholders. We're a true catalyst for economic development. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But one of the places where we've seen the greatest improvement has been on our finances. And this chart here is very important. This is a chart that shows what our economic reserves were and projected to be over about a 5-year period. This was a chart my CFO showed me on the first day on the job, December 10th, 2012. And what it indicated is that we were anticipating, that was the middle of our fiscal year, we run a July 1 to June 30th fiscal year, was that we're anticipating losing $33 million for that fiscal year and projected to lose $25 to $33 million every fiscal year for the next 5 years, to the point where our $120 million in reserves would have been completely gone and we would be fiscally insolvent in about a 5-year period. The next chart shows a significantly brighter picture. Within 7 months, we're able to turn that $33 million deficit into a $9 million surplus. And instead of being fiscally insolvent by year 4 or 5, if you look at that top blue line there, instead of having a less than zero operating reserve, we are projected now to be at about $163 million. So if you look at that comparison, it's a pretty dramatic swing in terms of our financial reality. The next slide indicates some of the things we did in order to get there. Some of the basics where we froze hiring and began to do a number of different pieces to bring our financial house in order. One of the biggest was on the IT front, where we were able to reduce a $56 million expenditure down to about $42 million, largely by making strategic cuts while improving the overall customer service aspect of our IT function. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. We saved big pots of money as well in places like in electricity and so forth. We worked out a new deal with Georgia Power that saves us upwards of $2 million every year moving forward for many years. We did little things like take out 4,500 employees, all of whom for the last 35 years have received some type of paper, either check or pay stub or what have you. We converted that to an electronic format that now they can go online and get all their information. That saves us about $250,000 a year with enhanced service levels. And a conversion to compressed natural gas, which right now is a much lower cost equivalent than regular diesel. So all of these things combined, we've been able to do to bring back some serious fiscal relief to the transit authority. This year's budget, our operating budget, we are, as I mentioned, a very large transit system, the 9th largest in the country and the largest in the Mid-Atlantic region. Our operating budget, which was approved by the board back in June, includes about $415 million in expenditures, no fare increase again for the third year in a row, restoring a significant amount of those services that were cut a number of years ago, adding new police officers to our workforce, and doing a number of other things, again, to bring back a better customer service experience while keeping our costs down. On the capital side, over $470 million in expenditures, almost 150 of that, though, is on the is to pay for debt service. I'll talk more about why debt service is so important to us. And this allows us to continue in what we call in our industry state of good repair, that we are doing the things we need to maintain our track and elevators and all of the signal control system, that sort of thing, so that our citizens and whatnot remain safe. However, you don't see any expansion in terms of expanding the rail line, expanding into other areas on that budget. All of this effort is part of a 5-year plan we're calling the MARTA Transformation Initiative. And this sets the blueprint for how we want to completely change the culture of the organization, how we want to become a more business-oriented unit, and looking for efficiencies in every way. But as I mentioned, we are still in a tough situation financially. MARTA is the largest transit authority in the nation that does not receive some form of state assistance in either operating or capital. So we're looking for different ways to increase our revenues. Everything from more aggressive advertising, looking at naming rights, concession opportunities in our stations, and the one that gets the most attention is what we call transit-oriented development. And this is where we use our train stations as a catalyst to work primarily with the private sector to create wonderful new places. And we try to accomplish 3 major things in these efforts. First, we want to create a better ridership experience for our current and future customers. Secondly, we want to actually improve the neighborhood that we're going, so that folks can have a better experience and create new jobs and have an overall more pleasant neighborhood and quality of life in and around our station. And then thirdly, we want to make some money off of it. So we've been able to partner with groups as varied as Walton Properties, headquartered out of Atlanta, at our Martin Luther King station, where they're building about a 500 apartment and condo complex, as well as retail space and other open space, and bigger developments with Columbia Ventures, where they're doing about a 700 apartment condo unit, 25,000 square foot of retail, as well as some other major things. And then we just announced a major partnership with State Farm, where they're building literally connected, and I believe Yvonne Williams is here, and she'll talk a bit about this in a moment as well, where they are literally connected to our Dunwoody rail station. And they mentioned, as they went out to their employees and asked, what did you want in your next headquarters? And they said they needed access to mass transit. So they're building a 10,000 person campus right there at our rail station. 3,000 new jobs being created. And literally a game-changing type of development where they say the MARTA rail station needed to be there as a prerequisite of them making that decision to move. Some of the other things that we're doing to improve the customer experience: new buses, new vans, better lighting, just an overall better customer service experience within and outside of our stations and on our buses. But as I mentioned, technology is one of the things we know we have to do and invest in smartly to keep our price down, but we have to do some things to attract new people to our service. We've got a number of major applications that are MARTA specific, such as our See and Say app, where you can be on the bus or train, see something happening, and pretend like you're sending an email or just reading or about to make a phone call, but actually be taking a picture of Steve Cooch as he's misbehaving on the train, and it would instantaneously go to our police department, and they could intervene at the next station or what have you. You send that message, and you can do that discreetly. It kills off the flash, so the person doesn't know. So the person doesn't know that you're sending information. In addition, we have real-time bus and rail info on your phones where you can use your phone. It'll tell you within seconds when that train's arriving. And then as the train is arriving, it'll tell you arriving. And as you're walking on it, it'll tell you boarding. And then it takes off, and you go on about your business and not waste time. But one of the things that's gotten a tremendous amount of attention, we have, like all subway systems, one of the problems you have with subway systems is you have to operate elevators. And elevators, unfortunately, late at night can be the victims of, particularly men, relieving themselves on those elevators. And this is a problem, again, we share with San Francisco and DC and other places. So we went out to the private sector, and we have what's called our urine detection device. And on some of our selected elevators, if the person were to relieve, again, typically himself, the cameras would catch it. It would send a message to our police department, alarms would sound, and we could quite literally catch him in the act. Now, and we can actually enclose him in the elevator and the whole works. This effort, of all the things we've done at MARTA, this has gotten more attention than anything else over the last couple of weeks. And we've got calls from the BBC, from all over the world about this stuff. So it's generated a couple of really ugly headlines because people want to be funny when they talk about these things. So one of the headlines is MARTA, ICUP. MARTA, looking out for number one. We take it where we can get it. So some other things we're doing in terms of moving forward on technology, we recognize, and in fact, I was on a panel recently with a group, the Intelligent Transportation Society of America, on their board of directors, and we had Bill Ford come out, the chairman CEO of Ford Motor Company, and he did a talk, and one of the things he said is that for the United States to stay competitive, we have to recognize we have to do the things that, particularly the new Generation X's and Generation Y's, find important, and that we need to fully embrace this, fully embrace it, that the new generation, this is what they want. And so we're strong believers in that as well. So from your phone, and over the next year, you'll be able to buy your fare, purchase your fare, and not even have to deal with the Breeze car. We're one of the pioneers in smart car technology, but we know this is the next generation. In addition, from your phone, you'll be able to have Wi-Fi and cellular connectivity in our tunnels, and within the tunnels, on our train system, which again is going to do, we think it'll bring more and more folks to the transit system. Major upgrades in a number of other areas. Cybersecurity is a big, big deal. We know that there are bad people out there who may want to run our trains against each other. So that's one of our ongoing efforts, is to fortify our system against that type of attack, and a number of other major initiatives that we've got underway from a technology standpoint. Last few slides, I did want to mention that our transit system remains one of the safest public transit systems in the nation. We fall victim to these things occasionally because if there's a fight or what have you on a train, invariably someone's going to video it and send it all over the internet and all over the media. We had a recent situation where there was a scuffle on the train, and in that we literally carried over 2 million people, and that was a singular violent incident all day, but it was the one that got all the attention. And that's what happens in our business. So people give bad news carried a little bit faster than good. But this chart here indicates that of the large transit authorities in the country, there's MARTA at number 2 in terms of number of serious incidences that happen on the trains and buses. Some of the other good news I did want to share with you is that we were able to go to Wall Street about, I guess it's been about 4.5 months ago, went with our CFO and a couple of others, met with Fitch, Moody's, and S&P, talked to them about some of the structural changes we made in the organization. 4 days later, they upgraded our credit, our bond rating, our overall credit rating. We sold some debt about 3 weeks after that. Immediate savings about $4.2 million. We're seeing continued savings on these efforts as our debt is now better positioned than it's been in a number of years. And as I mentioned, 6 months prior to our new team coming in, and our team is one that's it's a really good unit in that we have brought some great people from the outside, some talent from all over the country, while holding on to some really good people who were folks who were working at MARTA before, and we're creating more and a more cohesive, just a stronger group. But as our team has come into place, the most recent 6 months of media coverage that we've had, again, this was if someone were paying for media and saying, and to go out and say all the bad things they could about us, they would have had to spend millions of dollars just a couple of years ago to do it. The most recent coverage we received through this analysis, it shows that we would have to have spent $1.3 million to buy the positive coverage that we've seen in these recent months. Everything from lots of good feedback that we're hearing from some of you at the legislature. We certainly heard some good things from the governor, to just overall solid media coverage now. It's a lot different than where things were just a little bit ago. One of the big expansion opportunities we do have, again, for the first time in 41 years, MARTA has a chance to expand its footprint. And we're working with our potential partners in Clayton County. I want to thank those of you in the legislature who supported that effort that allows Clayton to now have a vote. If they vote yes on November 4th, we will start service in a limited way next March, and then comprehensive service soon thereafter. So this will be our first real expansion in quite some time. But as we think about investment, all I'll ask you as you look to come up with ways of funding transportation on the roadside is think of us and think of transit as you look at those solutions. MARTA is, I think, a great investment. I'll talk a little bit more about that as we close out. But the other thing we do want to remove is the 50-50 barrier. Some of you know about that it requires that MARTA cannot spend any more than 50% of the sales tax collection in any 1 year on operations, that we have to split it 50 between capital, 50 between operations. That makes sense sometimes, but we need the flexibility because there are unforeseen pieces, and the rating agencies have told us that this is something they look at as well, so it can impact our bottom line. Last couple of things I did want to mention is that this chart here shows the growth of the Gen Xers and millennials in the Atlanta region. And these are the folks who are telling us already, and some of you may have been hearing this, they don't care about driving as much as many of us do, that they are deferring cars and that sort of thing. And when they look at regions like Atlanta, Denver, Austin, Salt Lake City, and many of the other hot regions, they want places that give them work, live, and play opportunities that they can do without automobiles. So again, think of this as a great way to invest in our future. Last two slides, the last three slides. This shows the current investment that you're making in public transportation in the state of Georgia. 63 cents is not how much you're spending per day on transit in Georgia. 63 cents is how much we spend per capita annually in Georgia on public transportation. Overwhelmingly, that's spent in the Atlanta market. But if you look at that number in comparison to some of the other states, just up the road in North Carolina, they spend about 12 times more per capita on transit than in places like New Jersey and Illinois. Again, exponentially higher. Last two things here I did want to tell you. At MARTA, as a subway system was formed 35 years ago, about the same times as the subway systems in D.C. and San Francisco were formed. And all were envisioned as 100-mile subway systems. Both of those other two, San Francisco and D.C., have met that. And in fact, D.C. is still expanding now. They just opened their Silver Line. They'll continue on out to the Dulles Airport in just the next year or so. But MARTA is still at 48 miles of rail service. That's what we've been since, we've been at that number for more than 15 years or so now. And if we were to move forward and invest more, I'll give you my pledge that we will spend the dollars wisely. It'll be an economic return that'll be amongst the best in the nation, and you'll be glad you made that investment. Last thing on investment in public transit, that even if you don't expand in those areas, we think the investment is worth it. 3 areas. First, from an environmental standpoint, if you live in a 2-car household and just one person gives up their car and uses mass transit regularly, there's nothing more you can do to improve your environmental footprint and just help reduce the overall detriment to our environment. Secondly, using mass transit saves a lot of money. In Atlanta alone, again, if you're a 2-car household, give up one of the cars, you save on average about $10,000 per year for the typical family of 4. And then on the health benefit side, so when you use mass transit, you start walking a little bit more. And they found in a study, one of my former transit systems, I used to be the CEO of the Transit Authority of Charlotte, and a scientific study done by the American Journal of Preventive Medicine, they found that people who converted to mass transit lost an average of 6.5 pounds more per year than folks who drive alone. So save money, save the environment, lose a little bit of weight. What else can you ask for out of investment? Thank you very much. And if there's time to take any questions.
Keith, we really want to thank you too for your leadership since you've come on. You've done an outstanding job with the community board. And you've helped to, from my standpoint, I would say, and I know many others in the General Assembly, you have helped to turn Marta around, and they're looking upon a lot more favors than they were in the past. So we appreciate the job that you've done.
Thank you. You have a good team. Thank you.
Mark?
Thank you. I also, Mr. Parker, want to say great job. Marta, where didn't always have the best reputation, and you've done a lot of great things to do that. I have two questions, if I could ask. One is, how does Marta compare on, I use the term subsidy, but from the fare versus the overall cost? I'd like to get a better understanding of that. And then the second part is, one of the complaints that people hear, I'm sure you've heard this, is the lack that we have a lot of fare with our cars, but, and I ride, even though Marta doesn't come into my district, I've ridden it, have great experiences every time, but it's those multiple stops when you need to go to that second place and third place. Is there a strategy in place to address that? I know it's very expensive to do those things, but what is, and final, I wasn't going to, if I saw your numbers right, you did the two lines that were similar to Marta, and you expanded. If I turn around and look at those same two lines, under the crime, they didn't do very well crime-wise compared to Marta. And to me, that unfortunately fuels the idea that rail is going to have more crime. You've done a great job in Marta, but those two, San Francisco and D.C., that you pointed out, San Francisco is the worst on your crime list, and Washington, D.C. is two from the bottom.
Excellent questions. So let me make sure I'll try to get to the board. As far as subsidy, on the rail and bus system overall, we have about a 35% recovery rate, which is where you want to be in line, because the next step would be to raise fares more. And we have a population base right now that if we were to substantially raise fares, for example, at the San Francisco leagues and other leagues, we probably lose off some of our customers who couldn't afford a significantly higher rate. So there's a push-pull that goes along with the fare piece. On the second component, I think you were asking, well, let me do the crime one. We think the reason why we're very effective on the crime piece, and it's not, it won't be impacted by growing, is that we have a very aggressive approach to taking care of the nuisance crimes. We went through, and Mr. Gooch has seen presentations on this in the past, we went through an effort what we call the Ride with Respect campaign, where we don't tolerate any of what we call knucklehead behavior on the transit system, and that's the small things, like folks trying to sell things on the trains and playing loud music, or just being irritating to other folks on the trains. We now hand out tickets for that, and we'll suspend people from riding the service. And what we've had to suspend about 1,000 folks over the first 6 months of that effort, and very, very few repeat offenders. So what that says to us is that they get the message after the first time. So we will continue that type of approach as we expand, if that were to happen for us over the next few years. And then the other component was to talk about transfers, and that's one of the goals of every transit system, is to eliminate that. We're going through a study right now called the Comprehensive Operations Analysis that within the next 6 months will give us some ideas about how we can reduce the number of transfers in the service. But you hit it right on. Transfers mean more direct routes. More direct routes means more money. So we're looking to see how we can make that happen at the most cost-effective way possible. So you'll be hearing and seeing some information about that in the coming months.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I noticed on the chart, as it relates to that, I think about this over the years, and I've watched Margaret over the years, that when you think about transportation, there's those saying that transportation won't guarantee economic development, but I can guarantee you, without transportation, you won't have economic development. And I think we need to continue to couch it, as you noted on the presentation, the way you built the train station, and it created jobs. So MARTA is an economic tool. And we have to start, in light of the fact that the state does not give any resources to MARTA on a direct appropriation. And so, but I like that part of the presentation. And the other part of it I want to ask you is, what about revenue in addition to ridership? You mentioned that slightly. What other aspects, what other nuances have you tried advertising? Like, I think in some cities I've seen them when the whole buses, they do an advertising, they do the whole, paint the whole bus for advertisement or half of the bus. Do y'all do any of that?
We do. In fact, one of the slides I mentioned there, we were looking at a number of different revenue enhancing opportunities, including concessions, where we would sell potentially some space within our footprint to places as varied as Dunkin' Donuts, or someone who wants to sell vacuum cleaners, whatever they want to do. But we would work with them on developing a concession program that can bring in revenue. We are having a much more aggressive approach on advertising. So we generate just under $6 million a year from advertising on the trains and buses. And that actually is a shrinking revenue base because of the recession. People don't advertise as much as they used to. So we're looking to try to find ways to hold on as much of that revenue as possible. And then naming rights. That's another potential revenue source for us. So we're looking to see how much money that could potentially bring into us. So we're looking at every potential way of bringing new revenues into the transit system, or looking for ways to enhance the revenue we already have to grow on that as it
Well, I want to commend you because the relationship with the General Assembly is key. And with your leadership and what has occurred during your term, I noticed the relationship is much better, and hopefully we can continue this dialogue with Marvin and have a good relationship.
Thank you. The way the federal program works, and the questions about the streetcar program, federal programs works. The city of Atlanta used MARTA. We were the conduit to apply for the federal grant, and the way the partnership has evolved, MARTA will help provide operating and maintenance support for the city, while the city is the owner of the asset. Where it supports, where it can make a lot of sense for MARTA, is that it provides what we call the last mile of connectivity. So many people want to get to Centennial Olympic Park and get to the new giant Ferris wheel and the new College Football Hall of Fame and all of those things that are down in an area that right now, if you got off on the closest MARTA station, you have a decent little walk. The streetcar will now take you almost directly in front of those places. And I know it's the mayor's vision, Mayor Reed's vision, is to expand from that 2.5 mile streetcar route into a more robust system serving the entire Beltline area. So it can make a lot of sense for mass transit in our region.
All right.
And
Keith,
thank you.
it looks like
You look this way. You got a mic, don't you? Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kim. Keith, first off, I want to echo what the others have said. Someone who has a police car and whose old house district actually has more MARTA stops than any other house district in the state. I want to compliment you for your work. Let me sort of turn the attention to TIA, because one of the biggest roadblocks that I saw toward MARTA getting more funding being for expanded services was the failure of T-Splosh to pass, because you guys are going to be a beneficiary of that. If, let's just say T-Splosh comes back on the ballot 2016 in our region, what needs to be different in terms of a plan for the 2016 from 2012 so that it passes in 2016?
Well, that's an excellent question, and it's one I've given a lot of thought to. And I think my primary job is to remove any legitimate reason for people not to want to invest in MARTA. And so what I mean by that is I want to take away reasons, for example, people say, well, MARTA wastes too much money. I want to take that away as legitimate justification. We want to take away people saying, well, it's unsafe. So we're going to show them the stats prove that we have a very safe transit system. when they say that MARTA doesn't really do anything for the economy. I want to be able to show that MARTA has a profound impact on the economy and that the investment is well worth it. Now, there will be people who still won't want to invest in MARTA, but again, my goal is to take away all of the cumulative for them. So if we can improve our image, if we can improve our bottom line and be viewed as a partner, a positive partner, and what sells the TIA vote, or the next T-SPOS vote, I think we could go a long way in seeing a different outcome.
Let me ask you one other question in a different area, but it's my analysis of the various transit systems around the country is that the successful ones have a high ridership of not only of folks who are riding as a matter of choice versus necessity. Florida actually has an extremely high rate of folks who are riding simply because of necessity, but in order to get a full investment from the community, you got to get people who are choosing to do so. How are we going to do that?
Yeah, excellent question. In fact, we're seeing some positive results on it already. The fastest growing segment of new riders to MARTA are people who have incomes of $75,000 a year or more. So we're seeing that, seeing some improvements in that area. But what we have to do is to continue to do the things that we've started. The technology improvements, those are things that people who have choices demand. The reason why we came forward with the app that tells you exactly when the next bus or train comes is because busy people don't have time to just wait for a bus that they don't know when it's going to arrive, or a train that may be delayed by 30 minutes because they can get more work done. So we think technology is going to do a great deal to help us get those choice riders out there. In addition, we want to be great listeners. So a great deal of my time and our senior leadership time has been out to go to different stakeholder groups and ask, what would it take you to ride the system? And that's how we've come up with many ideas that we're now implementing. So if we can keep the fares low, make it safe, and take the service where people want to go with more frequency and better technology, we get more and more of those choice riders who join us. That's what they found in a number of the systems, including several of the ones I've had an opportunity to work with.
If I can, just one last quick one, Mr. Chairman. One big problem that I've seen, and I was on a study committee that dealt with transit in the metro area, was the fact we've got a Tower of Babel. We've got MARTA, we've got Cobb, we've got Gwinnett, and we don't have, and get touch on a question from Representative Hamilton, we don't have someone being able to get on Cobb's system and pay for it all the way through the MARTA system. How are we going to be able, and what are we doing in order to get that kind of cohesiveness between our systems so that folks feel comfortable being able to go from one system to the other without constantly having to pay different fares?
Over the last 6 months, we've worked very hard on solidifying that delivery that you're talking about. In fact, we now have a website that you can go to called GoATL, and it allows you, if you're in Cobb and want to go all the way down to the airport or even further, to plot, just place where you are on that website, and then where your destination is, and it will spell out for you exactly what buses to catch and what trains to get on and so forth, and you pay one time on it. And the MARTA Breeze system already is now being used in Cobb, in Gwinnett, at Greta. So we have still more work to be done to make it better, but we already have the real fundamentals and the foundation of a true regional fare payment system. We got more work to do to get the rest of it done, but we're off to a good start on that.
Once again, my compliments to you.
Mr. Parker, thank you very much for your comments. As a representative of the Metro Atlanta Chamber, you've been an extraordinary partner and champion for the business community. I want to salute all of your commitment to the incredible turnaround that you've accomplished in an incredibly short period of time. All of us that are in this room that are engaged in this process are on the search for in the determination of whether and how much additional funding for transportation is needed. So I have a very quick question for you, and I don't want us to fail to reiterate this, and it's already come up once. But is it not true that within about a month's time, Clayton County will be having its referendum for MARTA, and it represents the largest, I think by far the largest opportunity for transportation, for additional transportation funding for transit in this case. And could you just real quickly summarize how important that is, particularly since state motor fuel taxes cannot be used for transit operations.
That's correct. Well, we've estimated somewhere in the neighborhood of 46 to $50 million will be generated by the sales tax expansion into Clayton. For that, with that new money, we would look to start bus service almost immediately, and then start saving money to eventually build a high-capacity transit option. That could be commuter rail, that could be bus rapid transit, or some other, again, high-capacity option. Those funds help with the expansion of Clayton. It doesn't solve our situation really anywhere else. It allows us to expand our footprint, but in terms of fundamentals of new money for improved service anywhere else, it doesn't really do that piece, but it does expand our footprint. Very, very important.
And just as a follow-up comment, I think it would send a very powerful message for it to pass overwhelmingly, very, very convincingly, that Metro Atlanta and the state of Georgia is committed to increased transportation options throughout the whole state.
Well said, and we get comments about that constantly from all over our region about when are you coming to this place or when are you coming to that place. I think hopefully Clayton can be a bellwether.
All right, thank you, Mr. Barker, we appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Last thing, and I appreciate all the comments, but we are a good team. What I find, and I say this to our folks all the time, when things are going well, the CEO gets too much credit. When things go poorly, too much of the blame. So when things go poorly, remember I said that.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn, Ms. Vaughn Williams with the Perimeter CID. Just while she's coming up, we need to make sure I don't forget this. November 19th, Blue Ridge, November 20th, Rome. That's the next 2 weeks. So make sure you have that down on your schedules. November 19th, Blue Ridge, November 20th, Rome. With that being said, Ms. Vaughn.
Thank you, Chairman Roberts, Chairman Gooch, and Chairman Grantham. I want to commend Augusta. The hospitality here is unprecedented. I'm not sure I would be here had it not been a police escort from the other medical campus that brought me over here. And we got free traffic lights. So we saved on time, travel, and fuel today. But thank you very much. I'm just going to share something.
Does that mean that we're supposed to supply everybody with police escort?
I do. I think that's part of the state strategy, that we help get this traffic in our
Don't tell it all, you know.
But I want to share, there's something I could say at every one of these hearings that would be based on success, a model, and public-private partnership. And today I'm going to share on something that's a very bottom line result. Everything that Mr. Parker said is exactly true. If you were to stand in the middle of Perimeter today, at the corner of Hammond Drive and Peachtree Dunwoody, you would see 4,000 residential high-rise units. Adjacent to the Dunwoody station, you would see the construction for the $1 billion State Farm campus that's now underway. And every one of those employment figures are correct. They're coming out of the ground in 2015, 16, and 17 of 8,000 jobs. So we are generating funding for the state of Georgia. Perimeter generates over $300 million in taxes. I will have a new fiscal impact study ready for this committee at the end of the year with the new numbers that are coming in from retail sales, from the expansion of Cox, from the expansion of the State Farm, and from all of the job creation that shows that the transportation investment we have had from the Georgia Department of Transportation, from SERTA, from Greta, and from the ARC has created a new corporate center for the state of Georgia. In your packets that I will be delivering, because I was asked to give you all comments on behalf of the corporate CID for the state, I will share with you about 3 examples of already return on investment. And these are projects that don't necessarily make the top of the headlines, but they're very significant when we're thinking about transportation investment. With the Georgia Department of Transportation, we created the first Virgin Diamond interchange at Ashford Dunwoody. That project today, based on engineer estimates, is already producing a 30% increase from past travel conditions to new travel conditions. So in 5 years, it will totally pay for itself from the partnership we have with SERTA, GDOT, and the CIB investment. That is true numbers that are in charts that can be shown to the public of how we invest in transportation to create near-term results. Also, with the Georgia Department of Transportation, we have a PTOP program, which is signalizing 99 signals across jurisdictions through a major grant program of $2 million. Today, I can show you a chart that says that program has already paying for itself every 3.9 days in terms of improvement of conditions before and after. And the third example I'll give you is the Hammond Ramp project on Georgia 400. That project has been measured in between before and after conditions. It's already improving a 20% condition of major access at Georgia 400 to the perimeter center. These were all partnerships of which the CID invested. It's private sector funds. These are all partnerships which were conducted in an accelerated timeline of almost a 2-year turnaround from beginning to end of each one of these examples. PTOP being ongoing, obviously, as we continue the maximization of those 99 signals. What I'm saying is, whatever we do to continue to build resources for those private sector partners who are willing to step up and invest in the opportunity to help accelerate the opportunity to get good messaging, good unity of purpose, and create a multimodal connectivity, you will have a corporate sitter and you will have value added to the state tax digest. You will probably see a major new infusion of numbers when you calculate what's going to be next with that State Farm investment, the Cox investment, all the retail sales that will be at the perimeter. You will see a major hub. So we're proud to be on the Georgia Transportation Alliance Board. I'm serving on the executive committee because we're going to be part of the statewide message at Perimeter in Atlanta that this is a state strategy. This is a strategy to bring the logistics companies, the movement of goods and services from the Savannah port to the Atlanta airport to the corporate center in a unified mission to enhance our economy. If we're in traffic, if we're not moving that service, then we're not selling with the economy. And the economy goes from everybody being able to ride a transit station of 4 stations at Perimeter to being able to get through a major 285-400 interchange, which is now underway, thankfully. $715 million project with $10 million of the CID invested. And the governor has now announced that he'll probably have an environmental status of that project as early as the mid-part of 2015. That is unbelievable for 20 years of being in a planning stage for Georgia 400 and 285. So all I'm saying is the wise investment of this state to put transportation on the forefront is now becoming the policy decision and a very wise decision to start driving the numbers up for jobs, capital investment, return, and even the ability to create land values. I can tell you that property sales at Perimeter per acre right now, $5 million an acre and more. Occupancy rates are now from the 18% up to $30 a square foot. I mean $18 per square foot up to almost $30 a square foot just in the last 5 years. And then occupancy rates are at 10% vacancy. You wouldn't have seen that about 15 years ago. So my point is, there is opportunity to really tie this message together, show results to the state, and ability to show the public-private partnerships as being the right way to incentivize funding mechanisms to create new sources of revenue. And we'll be looking at that with the GTA Policy Committee, but I will share these charts with you all because this is real information of just the last, from 2009 to 2013. Every project delivered at Perimeter, from the Hammond Ramps to the Diverging Diamond to the Perimeter Parkway Bridge, and this PTOP program with GDOT, which is now going to the $715 million project with the I-75-400 interchange.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you so much. You did a great job. And always energetic.
That's true.
Let's see. Now, Mr. Rick Gurney, who is with the American Society of Civil Engineers.
Thank you, Chairman Roberts, Chairman.
You just want to go ahead and then we'll catch up with the slides.
That'll work.
Todd, aren't you a Georgia Tech graduate?
That says it all. That says it all.
From over 20 years ago.
Try to yell at that. They didn't have computers back then.
Well, I'm here to discuss the current state of Georgia's transportation infrastructure. The ASE represents 145,000 members throughout the country of civil engineers. The ASE has been grading infrastructure across this country since 1998, and we do a report every 5 years. In Georgia, we did our first one in 2004, and we did one in 2009, and again in 2014. What we graded was 16 different sectors of the infrastructure, including aviation, bridges, dams, drinking water, energy, parks and recreation, ports, rail.
We were told an earlier presenter made changes to the projector.
That's that right there. Our report card includes 16 different sectors, but today we're just going to talk about what you all want to hear, which is the roads, bridges, and transit. The roads were graded a C- this year because Georgia ranks 49th in transportation spending per person. Next slide. I think I'm going to be repeating some of the things that Keith brought up. But the gas tax in Georgia is one of the lowest in the nation at 7.5 cents per gallon. Georgia spends approximately $335 per capita in 2010 versus a national average of $497 per capita. For Georgia to increase its cost or its average expenditures of $497 per capita, we would have to generate another $1.6 billion in annual funding. Georgia ranks 8th nationally in total roadway miles with 122,917 miles. It also ranks 9th nationally in total interstate miles with 1,243 miles. Looking at Atlanta's commuters, you see the majority of them are single ride alone, 82%, 5% transit, 7% telecommuting, and 5% carpool. This has not changed in the last 2 reports, so we still have a lot of people driving alone. Annual average cost per commuter cost is $1,120. The annual delay time per commuter is 51 hours. The morning peak hour speeds in Atlanta freeways have decreased from 47 miles per hour and 45 miles per hour to 39 miles per hour in 2013, from 2008 to 2013. And the evening peak hours have decreased from 39 to 37 miles per hour. Atlanta ranks 4th worst in freight delays in the country, costing $775 million in 2011. The interchange of I-85 and 285 is the 9th worst bottleneck in the country. In 2009, 95% of Georgia's roads have a rating of fair condition or better. The national average is 83. So Georgia looks pretty good with that item. But if you look further down the list, what's happened is Georgia's rating is getting worse, as Keith had brought up, that we're sliding from being a really good roads to medium roads. And we've noticed that between the 2006 and the 2010 grading. The DOT, with limited funding, has come up with what they call the RTOPS program. It's a signal synchronization along regional commuter routes. This is a cost-effective way to reduce congestion. This program in 2012 eliminated 1.2 million hours of delay and saved 700,000 gallons of fuel. Georgia's safety, total fatalities have decreased from roughly 1,700 to 1,200 between 2006 and 2011. But Georgia still ranks higher than the national average of fatalities per 100,000 people. One other thing we noticed too is that 8% of drivers are over 65 years old, but account for 17% of all traffic fatalities. Georgia's population is aging, and we feel like this is going to be an issue that needs to be addressed. So we recommend increased funding, which that's what y'all are here for today. Improved transit access, make improvements to the heavy freight corridors, use available traffic technologies such as signal synchronization, and make improvements to accommodate the aging population, such as larger signs, bigger text, and better lit intersections. Georgia has almost 800 structurally deficient bridges. We gave the bridges a C-. Georgia has roughly 15,000 bridges. Roughly 5,600 of them are culverts, which are not span bridges, and then you have roughly 9,000 span bridges. These are the ones you have to be concerned about. Roughly 8% of Georgia's bridges are structurally deficient, and 25% are functionally obsolete. We recommend repairing or replacing structurally deficient bridges. We also recommend implementing asset management, which is what GDOT's doing right now. It's going from a worst first to a risk management system on their bridge work. And we also recommend focusing on preventive maintenance to decrease the cost later to fix it. And we also consider some type of alternate funding. Marta brought this up too. Georgia spends roughly 63 cents per person versus other states spend a lot more. So we recommend increasing the funding, improve the transit system collaboration, which y'all talked about earlier between the counties, and also repeal the 50-50 rule that MARTA has to deal with. As Bushmiller stated, we have not invested in infrastructure that is commiserated with the growth of the state. And Dan Agramonte, when he presented this report card to the legislature back in January, said this report card shows that our connection to the economy are ailing, hurt too often by underfunding and increasing congestion. If we want to be the gateway to the southeast commerce, we must deepen the port of Savannah, increase our transportation funding, and modernize our infrastructure. So Georgia's grades in our report were 4 Ds, 7 Cs, and 3 Bs. And we feel like that needs to be improved, but it's going to take some funding to do that.
That was like my first year of college. And the B's were in B. All right. And I know that you had to misquote Senator Miller, because I don't think he knew what commiserate means. Just to say it. Yeah. You must have been going to buy a Honda today. All right, any questions? All right, thank you so much. We do appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to present our report to y'all.
Well, we thank you so much. All right. Now, we're going to the public comment period. We've got one person who signed up to speak, Mr. Al Gray. And Mr. Gray, I am going to give you 10 minutes. Usually we keep them at 5, but being you're the only one, I'm going to let you have 10. How's that?
Well, that's great. Thank you, Chairman Gooch, Chairman Roberts, for giving me this chance to speak today. Thank you to everybody for attending. You've heard the story from the folks who received the tax money. Now you get to hear from the folks who pay the tax money. Only in Augusta, Georgia, could expanding the 5th hole of the Augusta National Golf Course be called critical transportation infrastructure. But I think that's where we are today. The T-SPLOST project and I think some misleading information has gotten out across the state about how this thing has worked. As alluded to earlier, several large exemptions that were passed after TIA passed in the Augusta region, affecting energy and manufacturing, which those exemptions were not scored properly for the legislature to see how much money it would be losing. And also, I think that changing the tax on automobiles from a sales tax to a property tax probably cut into it too. But looking at the numbers that are coming in from the Department of Revenue and the Finance and Investment Commission who fund these projects, it looks like the revenue started out like 18% lower projections in the first year. That gap is closed, but if you look at the effects of these structural deficiencies due to these exemptions, it looks like the funding is structurally deficient throughout the 10 years by about 10%. On the cost side, things might even be worse. As part of the TIA legislation, each region had a constrained project list, which is a 75% projects list of funds. And there's a designated projects that were to be funded, through the TIA 1% tax. At the time that this was done, that constrained list was actually made part of the vote, is my understanding. And that's what the voters voted to approve. Now, I was able to get custody of the master spreadsheet of the regional commission that backed up that project list. And over the 10 years, on an inflation basis, projects on that list were supposed to represent $630 million. And that $630 million was figured at 2% inflation a year. Now, the Real Watch Parkway project, which is partially TIA funded, just was let last fall. And in 2 years, each one of those years, the project went up over 5%. So you're looking at 5% versus 2% inflation that was figured in the estimate when the thing was passed and all the presentations that went out. So given the 10% deficiency in revenue and the huge increase in cost, it's 2.5 times what was projected, this project looks like the fourth band is out of money. There's $198 million in band, not band 4, but band 3, which is the last 40 months of this funding. So if you got that sort of impact, it looks like the projects will be underfunded by $150 million out of that $198 million. So basically, the last 40 months of band 3 or band 3 just won't get built the way it's looking here. Now, some of the things that are politically that have happened are kind of strange. Ms. Parr correctly stated that the downtown projects are in band 3 the last 40 months. But they weren't there to start with. When TIA passed, those downtown projects, a lot of them were in band 1. But Augusta was allowed to swap projects between band 4, band 3 rather, last 40 months, and band 2 in swapping. Augusta gets 63% for the first band, the first 40 months of funding for the entire region. Augusta gets 63% of the money. So what might happen, what we could see happen out in the counties is, with this huge increase in cost that wasn't projected, that Augusta's projects could eat up the funding for the counties outlined, the other 12 counties. And for instance, my county, Lincoln County, 85% of our project list funds are in that last band. So we're looking at 85% of our projects not getting done, and we voted the thing down. In Columbia County, there's something like $45 million in band 3 the last 40 months, in addition to the $25 or $27 million that Columbia County was donating under this whole setup. So that's a huge, huge loss. You're looking at about, 70 or $75 million of losses in Columbia County. They've given up under this arrangement. McDuffie County is even worse. In the last 40 months, 24 out of their $28 million in project list funding are in that last 40 months. Those projects probably won't be built. What will be built? Well, the Berkman's Road project was on that last 40 months. And this is a project that the Augusta National has been wanting for some time because they need more of a buffer around their fifth hole, and among other things, they have huge plans. They bought a lot of property on the other side of this road that they're incorporating into their facility. So what happened was, actually, the margin of victory were the downtown precincts in Augusta. Columbia County didn't vote for us, neither did Lincoln County. The margin of victory was largely those downtown precincts. And those people who voted for this thing, their projects were in Band 1, and now they're in Band 3. Displaced by this project and others. And under this arrangement, the Augusta National has agreed to lend Augusta $16.7 million to actually move it up front into Band 1. And it's supposed to be paid back out of the funds in the subsequent bands. I don't see any provision in TIA that allows this sort of thing to happen. When this switch was taken before the advisory panel that was supposed to watch out for people's interests, they were told they didn't even have a vote. Don't take a vote. So these changes were made. And some of the other political things that are crazy about this is that these outlying counties that have so much money in these outer bands, the funds flow directly to Augusta, Richmond County, and Columbia County because they're metropolitan planning organizations. And the way TIA is set up, the money can flow directly from the Georgia Finance and Investment Commission directly to Augusta and Columbia County. But the other counties are not in that situation. They have to go through DOT as an intermediary. And that creates a situation where, Augusta gets the money right off, and then everybody else has to wait for it. I noticed that this car made the statement that Georgia understands SPLOST. But right here in Augusta, Richmond County, people turned down SPLOST just 2 months ago. And also, TIA fails statewide in 75% of the regions that were asked to vote on. So I would say Georgia might have a different understanding of SPLOST than she sort of suggested. And the statement she made about people liking to know what they're buying, well, if you had a list that was set into place at the time of the vote, how can that list change? And people be knowledgeable about what's going on. Now, these counties are just ecstatic about getting the 25% discretionary funds because they're starved for funds. Of course, they love getting that 25 cents, but it's the crazy politics of it. I tell them, I said, it's crazy. I mean, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. I've never seen a bunch of people so happy to get 25 cents when you gave up a whole dollar. And that's the way this crazy convoluted thing is working. Now, I think the earlier presentations covered the points about the 1% of the 4% state motor fuel tax being diverted into the general fund, and that's one of the things I know that you're looking at. And in earlier presentations, Chairman Cross mentioned that increasing the statewide fuel tax here in this region, where we've already passed this TIAT SPLOST, would be like double taxation of us. So that's kind of the situation that we've got. And another thing, I guess one last thing that I would mention to you, one of the things that opponents of TIAT SPLOST were concerned about was that in the run-up to this vote, DOT had undergone what Governor Sonny Perdue called Enron accounting, and accused DOT of, because they lost track of their commitments over $1 billion And so there was a large feeling out here that this TIA thing was just a bailout DOT. And I would have expected a little greater sensitivity to that sort of charge. Now, down here in February, there was a big groundbreaking for the Riverwatch Parkway project. And the media got out across the state and they said that this project, TIA, was a huge success, that $34 million of TIA funds were going to fund this project. But people that knew better knew that that wasn't the case. That's a blended project in which $20 million is TIA money, but the $14 million is previously designated and allocated funds. And I wondered where it came from. And I went to the TIA site that has all the statistics on this, and I noticed really two things. One was that the blended projects, there's a schedule on their website that says TIA projects, and it shows $34 million. So the media goes and they look at that website page, and it looks like it's all TIA money, when it's not. In Lincoln County, we have a project that's one of the first ones that's completed, or about to be completed, was a passing lane project, some $4 or $5 million, and you know, it's on there for the full amount, and only $1 million of it's TIA money. So the people are not getting this true picture. Another thing, there's a statistic on that website that shows the historical 2011 cost of the projects region-wide as being $556 million, but they're comparing it to current tax revenues for the whole pot, the 75% plus the 25%. So I just feel like this thing is just terribly off base. You know, my recommendation as a citizen and somebody that campaigned against this monstrosity would be to repeal it, but I know that's probably not possible. So thank you for your time, and that's my comments and the input I'd like to make.
All right. Well, thank you. We appreciate you taking time to come out today and give your opinion. And as always, we appreciate those that do so. With that being said, any other comments? All right. For the committee and the members, understand November 19th is Blue Ridge, November 20th is Rome. We're actually leaving here, headed to Savannah, Georgia, where we will be tomorrow. So with that being said, we want to